My name's Kevin. I'm 27, and up until about 2 years ago, I still held out hope that my family would eventually come around and see me as more than the convenient scapegoat they molded me into. But people don't change just because you hope they will. Sometimes they double down. And when they do, all that's left is for you to stop hoping and start remembering who you are. I grew up as the oldest of three. Then came Rachel, the golden child, and Eric, the accidental caboose who was too young to matter in any of the family politics. From the outside, it probably looked like we were close. Family holiday photos, polite comments on Facebook, the usual digital facade. But behind the scenes, I was the one expected to clean up everyone's messes. When Rachel crashed her car in college, I was the one who drained my savings to help her keep it quiet so she wouldn't lose her internship. When mom forgot to pay the electric bill 3 months in a row and tried to blame it on Eric playing video games, I quietly covered it. No, thank you. Just a head tilt and a vague, well, that's what you're supposed to do for family, right? I kept doing it for years. Every favor, every dollar, every piece of emotional labor, I gave it without a fight. I thought that maybe, just maybe, if I kept showing up, they'd finally see me as someone they could be proud of. That illusion shattered last November on what should have been a normal afternoon. Rachel had just gotten engaged to her longtime boyfriend, Brandon. We weren't close, but he always struck me as one of those harmlessly bland types. He wore boat shoes to Thanksgiving and said things like, "Killer spread, Mrs. C." Still, I was genuinely happy for her. I thought this might be the moment we all turned a corner. I texted her congratulations, offered to help however I could, and even volunteered to handle their honeymoon costs as a wedding gift. She responded with a half-hearted THX, and I didn't think much of it. Then, 2 weeks ago, I got a call from mom while I was wrapping up work. I still don't know if she meant to let the venom in her voice slip through, or if she genuinely didn't care that I heard it. "Don't even think about showing up to the wedding," she snapped before I could say hello. "Rachel's finally going to have the perfect day she deserves, and we're not going to let you ruin it." I was quiet for a second, trying to figure out what she was talking about. I wasn't planning on making a speech or doing anything flashy. I was just going to show up, clap at the right moments, maybe hug a few people. "Ruin it how?" I asked slowly. Her voice dropped into that sickly sweet tone she always used when she wanted to disguise something cruel. "Kevin, you've never exactly looked the part. You know that, right? You always dress like you're going to a job interview, and not a good one. And the way you hover around? It's off-putting. Rachel doesn't want you in the photos. She asked me to tell you, and frankly, I agree." I couldn't breathe for a second. It felt like my ears were ringing. All the years I'd bent over backward for them, all the effort to be supportive, and now I was being told I didn't even deserve a seat at the wedding, that I'd somehow ruined their perfect little family image by simply existing in the background. I could hear Rachel's voice in the background too, light, dismissive, laughing like this whole thing was some kind of inside joke. "Tell him he can send a gift though," she called out. "He's still good for that." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't yell or defend myself. I just smiled. It was the same smile I used to give my boss when he tried to dump his work on me. The one that says, "You have no idea what I'm about to do." "Sure," I said, my tone light. "I understand." She hung up without another word. I opened my laptop, logged into the joint account I'd set up for the honeymoon gift, and reversed the transfer. $4,200, back into my pocket in 5 seconds. I took a screenshot of the reversal and texted it to mom with a simple caption. I wouldn't want to ruin anything. No reply, but I know she saw it. She always reads messages obsessively. Now here's the part they really don't know. Last year, I quietly invested in a chain of mid-tier venues that were struggling post-pandemic. One of them happened to be the exact location Rachel bragged about booking on Instagram, Lakeview Ridge, the one with the big white gazebo and overpriced brunch menu. The moment I recognized it in her post, I double-checked my emails. Yup, it was under our portfolio. Not only did I partially own it, I had final sign-off power on all large events held there, including, say, weddings. At first, I considered pulling the plug immediately, just canceling the booking, watching them scramble. But that felt too easy, too quick. They wouldn't feel it. They wouldn't understand it. I wanted them to stew in their own smugness a little longer. I wanted them to post their countdown stories, their dress fittings, their seating chart arguments. I wanted them to laugh behind my back just a few more times. So instead, I've been watching, patiently, waiting. I made a few quiet calls to the event coordinator at Lakeview Ridge, asking to be notified if there were any concerns or issues with the Carsons' wedding reservation. I reviewed the contract. And let me tell you, it's airtight, except for one tiny clause buried deep in the fine print. Full payment is required 10 days before the event, or the booking is considered forfeited. Not delayed, not postponed, forfeited. The wedding is in 12 days. And as of this morning, no final payment has been submitted. I didn't need to do anything yet. Just wait. Watch. Let them keep treating me like a footnote, like a burden they'd rather crop out of the pictures. Let them keep smiling for the camera, completely unaware that the floor they're standing on was laid by the one person they deemed unworthy of standing beside them. It was amazing how quickly people forgot where their money came from once it was no longer being handed to them in silence. I hadn't heard a single word from Rachel or my mom since that phone call. Not even a half-hearted, maybe you could come to the rehearsal dinner as a peace offering. Nothing. Just silence and smugness. But that's the thing about silence. It lets you hear everything they don't say out loud. I spent the next few days doing something I hadn't done in a long time, living my life without them. I hit the gym again, cleaned up my apartment, took myself out to dinner. For once, my phone wasn't blowing up with requests for favors or emergency money transfers. It was peaceful, quiet in the kind of way that feels earned, like the calm before a controlled storm. But then, 5 days before the wedding, I got a notification from the venue's coordinator, Amy. She's been with Lakeview Ridge for years and has seen more family meltdowns than a therapist. She's sharp, composed, and a little too observant for her own good. Her message was short and polite, but the subtext was crystal clear. Hey Kevin, just checking in. The Carson party still hasn't submitted the final payment. I've sent 2 reminders with no reply. Let me know how you want to handle it, since it's close to the deadline. I called her back that afternoon, and we talked through it. I kept my tone casual, professional. If it's not paid by the deadline, we'll consider the booking void per policy. Just follow the contract. Amy hesitated. You sure? I mean, they're really banking on this thing. They've got like 15 vendors scheduled. A whole live string quartet. And there's talk of releasing doves during the vows. I smiled faintly. Doves? Huh? Classy. She laughed quietly. Okay. I'll follow protocol. Deadline's in 2 days. Now, I could have warned them. I could have texted Rachel a simple, hey, just so you know, your payment's late. But I didn't. Because they made it clear I wasn't family. Not important enough to stand in a photo. Not important enough to warrant a chair. Just a walking wallet with a pulse. And that's when I decided I wasn't going to interfere. I was going to let the natural consequences of their carelessness do all the work for me. On the morning of the deadline, I took the day off work and treated myself to a good breakfast, eggs, coffee, extra crispy bacon. I checked my email around noon. Still nothing. No payment. No message. No Hail Mary, oh my God, we forgot. Just radio silence. That night, Amy marked the booking as canceled in our system. At 7:18 p.m., I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, another call. Same number. I finally picked up. Hi, is this Kevin? This is Teresa. I'm Rachel's wedding planner. I nearly laughed. Of course it was. Yes, I said, keeping my voice neutral. So, we're just trying to sort out a minor issue with the venue. I understand there was some kind of system error and the final payment didn't go through. Probably a glitch with our account. But we were hoping to confirm everything is still on track for Saturday. I leaned back in my chair, glanced at the ceiling. No system error. The payment deadline passed last night. The booking's been released. Silence. I could hear her breathing, and in the background, the muffled sound of someone arguing. Then her voice returned, thin and nervous. But surely you can make an exception, right? I mean, this is a once-in-a-lifetime event. The bride's already got her gown. Guests are flying in. Teresa, I interrupted gently, I understand. But the contract is the contract. If they wanted it locked in, they should have paid on time. We've been more than generous with reminders. She stammered a bit before trailing off with a shaky, I'll talk to Rachel. The next call came less than an hour later. This time it was Mom. Kevin, she barked. No greeting. What is going on with the venue? Rachel is in tears. They said the booking was canceled because of you. I raised an eyebrow. Me? I didn't cancel anything. The deadline passed. I just happened to know the coordinator. You knew and you didn't say anything. You let this happen? I let what happen? You mean I didn't step in and cover for your mistake again? There was a beat of silence. Then her voice turned cold. Do you really hate your sister that much? No, I said slowly, clearly. I just finally decided to stop letting you all treat me like I'm disposable. You said I'd ruin the photos. So I took myself out of the picture. You always have to make it about you, she spat. No, I said again, quieter this time. You did. You made it about me the second you decided I wasn't worth a chair at your perfect wedding. I'm just following your lead. She hung up without another word. That night, I got a text from Rachel. No greeting. No emoji. Just this. You seriously couldn't have warned us? And then, a second later, wow. You're a bitter little man. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because the next part? That was entirely in my hands now. The venue was gone. Their dream wedding had no foundation. Vendors were pulling out. Doves were staying caged. And they still had no idea just how deep this rabbit hole went. Because while they were scrambling to find a last-minute location, I was sitting on a little secret. They thought the worst had already happened. They didn't realize that I wasn't done yet. Not even close. The following morning, I woke up to a dozen new texts and 3 missed calls, 2 from Rachel, 1 from Brandon. The text ranged from thinly veiled guilt trips, "This is still family, Kevin," no matter what happened, to flat-out insults, "I can't believe you're so petty you'd sabotage your own sister's wedding." I read them all over coffee, scrolled through without reacting. They didn't know the half of it. See, Rachel and Brandon had spent the last year parading this wedding around like it was some royal event. Magazine-style engagement photos, a custom website with a countdown, a color palette with 4 shades of soft champagne. The venue wasn't just a pretty location, it was the entire brand. Lakeview Ridge was the backdrop in every one of their online posts, their Pinterest board. Even the RSVP envelopes had a watercolor painting of the gazebo. It was a curated fantasy, and they'd built it on borrowed money and other people's generosity, including mine. They hadn't told anyone I was paying for the honeymoon. They took the money, smiled for Instagram, and acted like it was just something Brandon pulled out of thin air. The worst part? I was proud of them. I actually wanted them to have a beautiful start. But apparently, the ugly brother didn't fit the theme. And now, with 4 days to go, the clock was ticking. They were scrambling to find a new venue, and I knew how that process looked from the inside. Nothing decent was available at that short notice, especially not one that could accommodate the number of guests they were expecting. Even if they found a backup, everything from their floral arrangements to their ceremony setup would have to be redone. And the real kicker? They bragged for months about the custom package they negotiated at Lakeview Ridge. What they didn't know was that the coordinator, Amy, gave them that rate because I told her to. I wanted to gift it without the awkwardness. Now that the booking was void, that rate was gone. If they did manage to rebook, it would cost them double if we let them back in at all. I got another call that afternoon, this time from Brandon. Hey, Kevin. Listen, I know there's been some tension, but I wanted to clear the air, man to man. I said nothing, letting him twist in the silence. He cleared his throat. Look, Rachel's been really upset. This wedding, it means a lot to her. To both of us. I'm sure we can figure something out, right? Like, you have connections at the venue. You could pull a few strings. Get us back in. Brandon, I said calmly, did you know I was the one paying for your honeymoon? He was quiet for a second. What? The honeymoon. The resort package you two posted about. The one with the villa and the private chef. That was me. $4,200. I sent it 2 months ago. No, I didn't know that. Of course you didn't, I said. Because your fiancée didn't want you to. She told me I'd ruin the photos. That she didn't want me there. So I took back the honeymoon. And now, you're asking me to step in and rescue the wedding. Another pause. I imagined him sitting there, staring at the wall like a kid realizing he hadn't done the homework. I'm not trying to take sides, he said, his voice quieter. But I don't think you understand how stressed Rachel is. This is her day. I almost laughed. Oh, I understand. I just don't care anymore. Click. 3 hours later, I got an email from Amy with the subject line, "Update on Carson's." I opened it. In short, Rachel had called the venue, sobbing, claimed she was blindsided by the cancellation, that it was unfair and completely unethical. She demanded to speak to the owner directly. Amy asked if I wanted to respond personally. I told her, not yet. Instead, I did something better. I logged into the venue's website backend and added a small update to their homepage. Please note, Lakeview Ridge is proud to host a private corporate event on April 27th. No wedding bookings will be honored on this date. That was their wedding day. I didn't use their names. I didn't have to. Anyone looking for a last-minute rebooking would see it. Every other venue in the area would assume we were booked solid. I had just quietly turned off the lights on every backup plan they had. That night, my aunt messaged me. Aunt Claire texted, "Hi, sweetheart. Can we talk?" Rachel's devastated. "Your mom is beside herself." I stared at it for a while. I replied, "She said I'd ruin her photos." I took that seriously. She left me on read. The next morning, the group chat lit up. Not mine, theirs. My cousin forwarded me screenshots. My mom was furious. Blaming me. Blaming Amy. Blaming Mercury in retrograde, for all I know. She ranted about how this wasn't how family treated each other, how she'd bent over backwards to include me. Rachel chimed in with a gem. "He's been jealous since high school. I always knew he'd find a way to make it about him." Jealous. That word hit like a slap and a punch wrapped in silk. Jealous of what? The curated spotlight she lived under? The endless stream of fake compliments and whispered betrayals? I had built everything I owned by working quietly while they posed for pictures. I gave without asking for credit. And now, apparently, I was bitter for not letting them set me on fire one more time. So I made a choice. I forwarded everything to Amy and said, "You can respond now. Tell them the owner reviewed the situation and denied the rebooking. Per policy." Then I picked up the phone and made one more call. A friend of mine named Carter runs a high-end catering company downtown. He owed me a favor. I asked him for a little something for Saturday. Nothing big. Just a modest corporate luncheon. 10 people. Same day, same time. Same venue. He laughed. "You want me to book the place out on their wedding day?" "Not just book it," I said. "I want photos. Instagram. The works. Tag the venue. Hashtag the event. Make it look like the best catered celebration of the year." He was quiet for a second. "Damn, Kevin. You're really doing this." I smiled. They asked me not to show up to the wedding. So I won't. But that didn't mean I wouldn't leave my mark. Saturday arrived with the kind of weather brides pray for: crisp air, not a cloud in sight, soft sunlight filtering through early spring leaves. The lake at Lakeview Ridge was still, reflective like glass, and the white gazebo gleamed against a backdrop of budding cherry blossoms. It was perfect. Idyllic. And not at all what Rachel was expecting. I got up early that morning, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to savor every minute. I took my time showering, brewed the good coffee, even ironed my shirt. Not to wear, just to feel a little sharper. Then I sat by the window, phone in hand, watching the chaos unfold in real time. The first post came from a distant cousin, Rachel's college roommate. A confused selfie in her car. "Is the venue closed? Just got here and no one's answering the gate. Please tell me I'm not the only one who didn't get a cancellation notice." I sipped my coffee, refreshed the tag. More followed. Bridesmaids in full makeup, standing outside the locked gate with their arms crossed. Groomsmen in rental tuxedos, pacing beside parked cars. A flower girl asleep in someone's back seat, her tiara sliding off. They hadn't told anyone. That was the part one hadn't expected. I figured Rachel or my mother would have done damage control, at least sent out a mass text. But no. They were so convinced everything would work out, so sure someone, me, would swoop in to save them at the last second, that they hadn't even warned their guests. Entitlement turned to paralysis. Then came the post that made me laugh out loud. Lakeview Ridge, hosting a beautiful lakeside luncheon for a special team today. Nothing like a little sun, spring air, and great food to celebrate big wins. Hashtag private event, hashtag booked out, hashtag corporate luxury. 3 long tables draped in white. Crystal glassware. Waiters in black vests. A champagne pyramid. In the background, barely visible, but unmistakable, was Rachel's custom floral arch, now repurposed for our luncheon's dessert bar. The sign she had painted by an Etsy artist, "Forever Starts Here," was flipped and relettered by Carter's team to say, "Success starts here." I wish I could have seen her face. Around noon, I got a call from Amy. I picked up immediately. "Kevin," she said, barely containing a chuckle. "We have guests trying to climb the side gate." I laughed. "Please tell me that's a joke." "Nope." One of the groomsmen swears he knows someone inside. I told them the property is under private booking and that security has been notified. "They bring the doves?" "Oh, yes. 2 handlers and a crate. They're sitting on the curb looking very confused." I chuckled again, slower this time. "You've been amazing, Amy." "Really? I owe you big for this." "You don't owe me anything," she said. This is the best Saturday shift I've had in years. At 2:41 p.m., the inevitable happened. My mom called. I let it ring. Then Rachel. Then Brandon. Then my aunt. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I opened the group text, the one I was still silently in, even though they'd stopped tagging me months ago, and typed exactly 2 words, "You're welcome." Then I left the chat. That night, I heard from Eric, my younger brother, the only one in the family who'd ever treated me like an actual person. He wasn't at the wedding. He called me the day after I pulled the honeymoon fund, said, "If they're going to act like you don't exist, I'm not pretending they're saints." He stayed quiet, respectful, but I could hear in his voice he'd had enough, too. His message was short. "Eric, I saw the posts. I don't even know what to say, but I'm proud of you." They needed to be humbled. I'll call tomorrow. And for once, I felt it. Not just pride, not just relief, closure. Because here's the thing. People like Rachel, like my mother, they build their world on optics, on appearances, the seating charts, the dress fittings, the stories they'll tell over a drink in 5 years. What I gave them wasn't just a ruined wedding. It was a shattered illusion. No one would remember how stunning her dress was. They'd remember standing outside a locked venue in heels for 2 hours. They'd remember the doves that never flew, the brunch that was served to a corporate team while the wedding guests stood in the parking lot, the whispered questions, why didn't they pay? Didn't they have help? And eventually, someone would point out that maybe, just maybe, Rachel wasn't the victim. Maybe the brother she tried to erase had simply said enough. 2 days later, my mother showed up at my door. She didn't knock. She pounded. I waited a minute, then opened it slowly. She looked exhausted. Her mascara had dried into the wrinkles beneath her eyes. Her blazer was wrinkled, her posture hunched. But her tone? Still sharp. "You think you proved something?" she hissed. "No," I said calmly. "I know I did. You humiliated your sister." I looked at her for a long time. "She humiliated me. You did too. For years. You just thought I'd keep taking it. That I'd always show up, clean up, and keep quiet. Not anymore." She stepped forward like she wanted to argue, like she had a speech prepared. But I didn't give her the space. I bought the venue. I paid for the honeymoon. I supported this family when no one else did. And you erased me for optics. So this time, you got erased. She stood there, trembling. But she didn't say anything else. Finally, I added, "You can tell Rachel I'm not angry. I'm free. That's a better gift than anything on a registry." And I shut the door. A month passed. Then 2. I didn't hear from them. Eric and I grabbed dinner twice a week now. We talked about work, about life. Sometimes, we even laughed about the great wedding disaster of the year. I'd gotten a few sly messages from people who had been at the event, congratulating me without really saying what they were congratulating me for. And that was enough. I didn't need a parade. I didn't need a public moment. I had peace. I had power. And for the first time in years, I had a family that I chose, not the one that tried to write me out of their perfect picture. So I took the frame, and I burned it. My name's Evan. I'm 28, and I guess the best way to start this off is by saying I used to think family loyalty meant something. That if you showed up, gave your time, your money, your care, people would see it, that it'd matter. But this past Easter proved I was wrong. I'm the oldest by a long shot. My brother, Jeremy, is 22. My dad remarried when I was 16, not long after my mom passed. That part still stings to even type out. Her death kind of shattered everything, and while I did my best to hold the pieces together, Dad moved on with eerie speed. Within a year, he was dating this woman named Karen, yes, with a C, because of course, and by the time I graduated high school, she was already moving into the house we'd shared with Mom. It was never really a family after that. More like a blended arrangement that leaned heavily in Karen and Jeremy's favor. At first, I tried. I really did. I offered to help with Jeremy's homework. I brought home groceries, even got a part-time job to contribute while I was in college. Karen always acted polite, but it was that forced kind of nice. Like the way someone smiles at a cashier but doesn't make eye contact. And Dad? He just faded. Started missing my recitals, brushing off our movie nights, canceling father-son trips we used to take every spring. Said he was busy, but he wasn't. He just stopped trying. I moved out at 20 when I finally got tired of feeling like a third wheel in my own house. But even then, I didn't cut ties. I still showed up for birthdays. Still mailed gifts. Still called every Sunday like clockwork. It was like I kept hoping. Maybe next time they'll see me. Maybe next time it'll be different. Spoiler, It wasn't. This year, Karen decided to throw a big family Easter gathering. She posted it in our group chat like it was this grand surprise: backyard egg hunt, catered food, family traditions. I rolled my eyes, but I agreed to come. Mostly because Jeremy had asked me directly, and I figured, all right, why not? I had the day off, and maybe this was a chance to reconnect. But somehow, even when I know better, I still walk into their house hoping things will feel like home again. The day started off okay. Karen assigned tasks like she was managing a restaurant. Evan, you take the backyard, set up the egg hunt stations, make sure the tables are clean. The kids need juice boxes in the cooler, and don't forget the plastic cutlery. No, please. No, thank you. Just orders. I didn't argue. I smiled, nodded, and got to work. I always do. It's like muscle memory now. I cleaned the backyard, arranged the plastic eggs, laid out the tablecloths, even fixed a few chairs that were wobbling. I went on a last-minute store run when the catering service called and said they forgot the vegetarian dish. I paid out of pocket for it, $74.63. Never got reimbursed, by the way. Around 3 p.m., people started arriving. Cousins, in-laws, Karen's side of the family mostly. I was the only one sweating in a button-up shirt with grass stains on my knees. Everyone else had somehow shown up fresh, clean, and clueless. Karen's sister greeted me like I was the hired help. "Oh, you must be the one setting everything up. You're doing such a good job." She said it with that faux cheery tone that made me want to laugh and scream at the same time. My own uncle didn't even recognize me at first. Jeremy gave me a side hug and muttered, "Glad you came, man," before disappearing with his girlfriend. As the afternoon went on, I realized something: no one had saved me a seat at any of the tables. I kept telling myself it was an oversight, that maybe someone would notice and fix it. But the more people trickled in, the more chairs were taken, until I was left standing with a plastic cup of lukewarm lemonade in my hand and a forced smile on my face. Karen finally announced dinner was ready. People started lining up near the buffet, paper plates in hand, laughing and joking. I lingered near the folding table where I'd set out the forks. That's when it happened. I was reaching over to straighten a napkin holder when I heard my dad's voice, sharp, sudden, and just loud enough for the people around us to stop talking. "Evan," he said, not looking at me, "you're just a guest in this family now. Don't overstep." It was like someone had sucker punched me. At first, I didn't even process it. I just blinked, confused, thinking maybe I misheard him. But then Karen, standing beside him with her arms crossed, nodded. "It's not your place to run things here," she added with this smug little smile like she'd been waiting years to say that out loud. I looked over at Jeremy. My brother. My baby brother who used to follow me around like a shadow when we were kids. He met my eyes and looked away. Not a word. Not a single word. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there with that same stupid plastic cup in my hand, realizing I was the only one in that yard who felt out of place in a family I used to belong to. I walked inside. Didn't say a word. Found my bag by the front door where I dropped it earlier that morning. And then I started unplugging things. The Wi-Fi router? Gone. I bought it last year when theirs broke and no one bothered to replace it. The backyard speakers? Mine. I'd lent them for Jeremy's graduation and never got them back. Gone. That extra generator keeping the catering warm? Surprise, that was mine too. Bought it during a snowstorm last winter and left it with Dad, just in case. I unplugged it and carried it to my car like it weighed nothing. It felt like something in me had just clicked off. Like the years of bending over backwards, staying quiet, swallowing hurt, just evaporated. And I wasn't done yet. I walked out to my car slow and steady, like I wasn't fuming inside. Like I hadn't just been told, out loud, in front of a yard full of people, that I didn't belong to my own family anymore. But I wasn't going to cry. Not for them. Not anymore. As I opened my trunk and started loading the gear, I noticed someone watching me from the kitchen window, Jeremy. He didn't come out. He didn't say anything. Just stared. I almost laughed. Maybe he was shocked I didn't just slink off quietly like always. Not this time. After loading up, I got in the car and sat with the engine running. I stared down at my phone and opened a little folder I kept on my notes app. It was labeled Shared Expenses, and it held a lot of things my family had conveniently forgotten I'd covered over the years. Like the car insurance policy that was still in my name. Dad had totaled his car a few years back, and I stepped in to co-sign the new one and get him a good rate through my provider. He never transferred it. I paid the monthly premiums. Quietly. Out of guilt, I guess. Or habit. or the utilities. The house was still under Mom's name when she passed, and I'd never officially removed myself as the secondary account holder. When they had a financial rough patch last year, Karen had taken a break from work to focus on her wellness. Whatever that meant, I agreed to cover the electric bill for a few months. Those months turned into a year. I had all the account logins, still had access, still had control. And then there was the big one. I wasn't just footing the bill for the Wi-Fi or their Amazon Prime. I was also the guarantor on their new HVAC system. They'd had a problem with their old unit during the worst summer heat wave in decades, and when the contractor required a cosigner, guess who got the call? Me. I didn't even hesitate. Just showed up and signed. Paid the first installment out of pocket to get things rolling. Guess what else I had? The contract. So I opened the billing portal, unlinked my card, clicked transfer ownership. When it wouldn't let me because they hadn't made enough consistent payments, I clicked cancel autopay instead. Then I logged into the electric company, paused the payment, texted customer service with a simple line. I'm no longer residing at this address and would like to be removed as a payee. They replied within minutes, saying they'd reach out to confirm with the primary holder. I smiled. Then I found the insurance app, pulled up the car policy, removed my payment method, sent a cancellation notice with an end-of-month date, and finally, I screenshotted every single cancellation, removal, and email confirmation and emailed it to my dad. Subject line, since I'm just a guest, here's what I'll stop providing. I hit send. Then I drove off. I was about 5 minutes away when the call started. First it was Jeremy, then Karen, then Dad. None of them left voicemails. I didn't answer. Instead, I drove to my apartment, parked, and made myself a sandwich. The kind I always used to eat as a kid, peanut butter and jelly with the crust cut off. I needed something familiar, something grounding. It was about an hour later when Jeremy finally texted. Dude, what's going on? I stared at it for a while before replying. I texted, just a guest, remember? No response. The next morning, I woke up to find 4 missed calls from Karen, 2 emails from Dad, 1 angry, 1 concerned, and a voicemail from my aunt saying she'd heard things got tense and maybe I was overreacting. Overreacting. I helped throw an entire family gathering, paid out of pocket, and was told publicly I didn't belong. But sure, I was the problem. They underestimated me. Again, that afternoon, the power went out at their house. I know this because Jeremy texted, "Power's off. Did you do something?" I waited 5 minutes, then replied, "You'd have to ask the family. I'm just the guest." 2 hours later, my dad left me a voicemail. His voice was tight, controlled, but there was a little crack in it, like he couldn't quite believe this was happening. "Evan," he said, "we need to talk. I think things got out of hand." Karen shouldn't have said that. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. "You know I appreciate everything you've done. Let's talk. Please." I didn't respond. I needed him to feel it, really feel it, because this wasn't just about Easter. It wasn't about a folding chair or some plastic eggs. It was about every ignored effort, every brushed-off holiday, every time I called and no one picked up. It was about being made to feel like a burden in the same house where I used to hear bedtime stories and make pancakes on Sundays. It was about the little boy who watched his dad move on too fast, who kept hoping, year after year, that maybe, just maybe, he'd be seen again. And now? Now he finally was. And I wasn't done yet. I waited a full 24 hours before even thinking about calling him back. Not because I was playing games, but because I needed the time. To think. To breathe. To not react emotionally like I always had in the past. I wanted to go into this clear-headed, not with hope that he'd suddenly apologize or explain it all away, but to hear, really hear, what he had to say when the control slipped out of his hands. So the next evening, around 6 p.m., I called. He answered on the first ring. "Evan," he breathed out, like my name was a lifeline. "Thank you. Thank you for calling. Look, I don't know what Karen said, or what you think I said." "No," I cut in, my voice calm, firm. "Don't start there. You know exactly what you said. Don't pretend it didn't happen." There was silence on the other end. I could hear him breathing, but he didn't interrupt. "Because I want to be really clear about something," I continued. "You said I was a guest. Out loud. In front of your wife, your son, and every person in that yard. You said I didn't belong. After I spent my whole Sunday and half my paycheck making sure your family gathering went smoothly. Evan, it wasn't about. It was exactly about that," I said. "You made a choice. And I made mine. He sighed, and suddenly his voice took on that familiar, frustrated edge. The one I'd heard in arguments when I was a teenager, the one he used when he wanted to sound like the adult in the room. I think you're overreacting. You took it too far, cutting the power? Taking the speakers? You're punishing the whole family over a single sentence. I almost laughed. A single sentence? That sentence wasn't a slip-up. It was how you've treated me for years. It just slipped out this time. He was quiet again. Look, he finally said, softer. I get it. Things haven't been perfect. But you've always been the strong one. You always handled things better than Jeremy. That's why I leaned on you. That's why I thought you could take it. There it was. The confession. The unspoken truth behind a decade of imbalanced affection. You thought I could take it, so you gave it to me? I asked. You let her treat me like a servant. You let Jeremy skate by while I picked up the slack. You never once asked how I was doing. And when I finally stopped doing everything, suddenly I'm being dramatic. That's not what I'm saying. It's exactly what you're saying. I could feel something inside me, steady, solid, clicking into place. Not anger. Not bitterness. Just finality. The kind that doesn't scream. It just leaves. Here's the thing, I said. I'm not mad. I'm done. Evan. No. I'm done trying to prove I belong to people who only notice me when I'm useful. You want the power back on? Pay your own bill. You want the car insurance covered? Transfer the policy. The HVAC? That debt's yours now. I'm not carrying this anymore. I let the silence settle in again. You made me the guest, Dad. So I'm checking out. I hung up before he could respond. I didn't block him. I didn't send a dramatic follow-up email. I just disappeared from the role they'd cast me in. The days that followed were quiet. Tense, but quiet. No more calls. No more texts. I heard from my cousin, the one who still talked to me, that there'd been a whole meltdown after Easter. Karen blamed Jeremy for not managing the situation. Jeremy blamed Karen for escalating things. My dad apparently tried to smooth things over, but when the air conditioning cut off in the middle of the week during an unexpected heat wave, that broke whatever cool he had left. They had to pay for an emergency technician visit. In cash. Turns out, when you take the one responsible person out of the equation, things fall apart. I focused on my own life. Took a few days off work. Slept in. Ate well. Cleaned my apartment. And for the first time in forever, I didn't feel the weight of being the good son. The fixer. The one holding the family together with duct tape and denial. Then, a week later, Jeremy showed up at my apartment. I heard the knock and checked the peephole before opening. He looked sheepish. Sweaty. Like he'd been pacing in the hall for too long. Hey, he said. I raised an eyebrow. You could have texted. I figured you wouldn't answer. I didn't say anything. Just waited. I didn't know, he said after a second. About everything. The payments. The catering. The insurance. I didn't realize how much you were doing. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. You didn't care to know. He nodded. Yeah, I didn't. I just got used to it. You always handling everything. I guess I thought you liked it. Did I look like I liked it? He smiled faintly, then looked down. No, not really. There was a long pause. I could tell he wasn't here to argue. That was new. I talked to Dad, he said. He's Dad. He's blaming Karen, but also trying to guilt you for abandoning him. I told him he was lucky you stuck around as long as you did. That almost made me smile. Then he added, I want to fix things with you. Not for them. Just us. I studied his face. For once, there was no entitlement there. No cocky younger brother grin. Just honesty. You want to fix it? I asked. Then start by not needing me to do all the work. He nodded again. Fair. I opened the door wider and stepped aside. You want water? He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath the entire time. Yeah, that'd be great. As we sat down in my kitchen, something shifted. Not fully healed. Not forgiven. But cracked open, just enough for the air to move again. My dad would keep calling, I was sure. Karen might even send a guilt-ridden email about rebuilding trust. But I wasn't playing along anymore. This time, the guest had left for good. Jeremy and I talked for nearly 2 hours that night. Not just about the Easter disaster, but everything. The years of imbalance. The quiet resentments. The way I always felt like the backup plan, the filler son, the one who made things work while Dad and Karen fawned over Jeremy like he was some rare collectible. To his credit, Jeremy didn't deflect. He didn't make excuses. He listened. I think I was just lazy, he said at one point. It was easier to let you carry it all. And I guess I figured, if no one was asking you to stop, then it must have been fine. That's the problem, I said quietly. No one ever asked if it was okay. They just assumed it. He nodded slowly. I'm sorry, man. And weirdly, I believed him. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was talking to my brother, not Dad and Karen's golden child, not the kid who used to borrow money and never pay it back, but the guy who used to sneak candy into my room during finals week, or beg me to stay up late to play Mario Kart when we were kids. The version of him that existed before all the favoritism twisted everything. I didn't say, it's okay, because it wasn't. But I said, thanks. And that was enough for now. The next few weeks were uneventful in the best possible way. I went to work, came home, watched movies I hadn't seen in years, cooked dinner for myself instead of grabbing takeout while sprinting between responsibilities. My apartment became a haven instead of a layover between disasters. It was the calmest I'd felt since college. Dad kept trying. At first, it was subtle. A forwarded meme. A shared calendar invite to family brunch that I promptly declined. Then came the apology texts, each more desperate than the last. We were all stressed that day. You know, I didn't mean it like that. You've always been part of this family, Evan. Please don't do this. You're tearing us apart. That one actually made me laugh. Me, I'm not tearing anyone apart. I'm just done being the glue. He didn't reply. Then came the final straw. 3 weeks after Easter, Dad sent me a long email. Not to apologize. Not to take responsibility. But to guilt me. Karen is heartbroken. Jeremy's been upset. You've made your point, but maybe it's time to stop punishing everyone. Punishing. That word lit something inside me. Because let me be clear, I hadn't done this to be vindictive. I didn't flip the switch to hurt anyone. I did it because it was the only way to be heard. To stop the cycle. To remind them that I wasn't some silent, dependable footnote in their lives. But apparently, standing up for myself was punishment. So I wrote back. You want to talk about punishment? Let's talk. For 10 years, I've helped with your bills. Your car. Your home. I paid for groceries when you were short. Paid Jeremy's college application fees. Lent Karen money for that wellness retreat she never paid me back for. I was your backup wallet, backup organizer, backup emotional support system. I planned birthdays. I picked up decorations. I called every Sunday for years. You forgot my birthday twice. At Christmas last year, you gave me a $20 gift card while Jeremy got a new laptop. You said I already had a good setup. And on Easter, after I planned and paid and set up and cleaned, you stood in front of the family and said I was just a guest. You don't get to call my boundaries punishment. You don't get to hurt me for years and then act shocked when I finally stop letting you. You made your choices. I'm making mine. I ended it with a simple line. I wish you well, but I'm done. And I was. I didn't check for a reply. I archived the thread, blocked his number for my own peace, and stepped away completely. Now here's where it gets interesting. 2 months later, I got a call from Jeremy. Dad moved out, he said, voice low. Karen kicked him out last week. What? She found out he was behind on the HVAC payments. He kept telling her they were taken care of, but after you canceled everything, he just ignored it. Thought you'd cave eventually. I closed my eyes. Of course he did. So they started getting final notices. Then the repair guy came back and said there was a lien being placed if they didn't pay. Karen lost it. She blamed him for everything. Said you never should have been responsible for any of it. I raised an eyebrow. Now she says that? Jeremy sighed. Look, I'm not defending her. She's still Karen. But I guess without you as the buffer, they imploded. It was never going to last. He went quiet for a second. He's been staying at Uncle Rob's. Said he's thinking of selling the house. Wow, I muttered. All of that from one sentence in the backyard. Jeremy laughed dryly. Yeah, guess you weren't, just a guest, after all. We stayed in touch after that. Slowly. Casually. He came by a few more times. We grabbed lunch. He actually started asking me about my life for once. And on my birthday, for the first time in years, he showed up with a homemade cake. Just like Mom used to make. Chocolate with raspberry filling. I didn't even know he could bake. Figured I owed you one, he said. For all the ones you covered. I won't pretend everything healed overnight. It didn't. Some wounds don't close neatly. They just stop bleeding. But I had peace. And that was something. As for my dad, he never responded to my final email. But 3 months later, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. Evan, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve it. But I read your email 100 times. You were right. About all of it. I got used to you fixing everything. And when you stopped, I didn't know how to function without you. That was my failure, not yours. I'm sorry. I don't know if we'll ever talk again, but I hope one day you can remember the good parts of us. Because I do. I stared at it for a long time. Then I folded it up, placed it in a drawer, and walked away. Not angry. Not vindicated. Just free. Because the truth is, sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't loud. It's not a dramatic confrontation or a public takedown. Sometimes, it's silence. It's leaving. It's saying, you don't get to hurt me anymore. And meaning it. My name's Adam, I'm 28, and I just graduated from med school last month, top of my class, actually. I should have felt like I was on top of the world, standing there in my cap and gown, diploma in hand. But instead, when I looked out at the VIP seating I'd reserved for my family, 12 padded chairs with gold-lettered name cards, I saw nothing but empty seats. Not one of them showed up. Not my mom, not my stepdad, not my little sister, not even my Aunt Kathy, who swore up and down she wouldn't miss it for anything. Funny how anything turned out to be a carnival cruise to the Bahamas. Let me back up. I wasn't born into a family that celebrates academic success. If you brought home straight A's, you were either trying too hard or making everyone else feel dumb. That was the attitude. My mom used to say things like, "Nobody likes a show-off, Adam," when I came home with a perfect report card. Or, "Okay, Mr. Smarty Pants, does this mean you think you're better than us now?" when I talked about wanting to be a doctor someday. And it wasn't just her. My stepdad, Gary, who I swear took pride in being the loudest guy in any room with the least to say, used to joke, "I don't trust any man who can't change his own oil." Medicine, in his eyes, was book stuff, and book stuff was for people who couldn't handle the real world. But I didn't care. I was stubborn. I studied like my life depended on it. When I got into med school on a scholarship, I didn't expect a parade or anything. But I did think, just maybe, they'd be proud. Instead, my mom asked me why I didn't just become a nurse like her friend's daughter. "It's shorter, and you still wear scrubs." Still, I tried. Over the years, I kept inviting them to milestones, white coat ceremony, clerkship match day, residency interviews. Every time, it was the same. "Flights are too expensive." Or, "We've got a lot going on that week." Or, "You know how Gary feels about big cities." I stopped pushing after a while. I just sent updates through the family group chat, usually met with radio silence or the occasional thumbs up from my little sister, who was the only one who didn't seem totally jaded. But graduation was supposed to be different. This wasn't just about me, it was a culmination. 8 years of nonstop grind. I worked night shifts, studied through holidays, missed birthdays and funerals. I slept in my car more times than I care to admit because I couldn't afford rent and gas. So when I got my residency offer at a prestigious hospital, and when I found out I'd be giving a speech as part of the ceremony, I decided I was going all in. I paid $12,000 of my own savings to fly everyone in. First-class tickets for my mom and Gary, a hotel suite near campus with a view of the lake, catered dinner reservations, custom programs with their names listed under honored guests. I even had a florist put together centerpieces in my mom's favorite colors. I imagined her tearing up when she saw my name in the program. I imagined her telling me she was proud, maybe for the first time in my adult life. The day before the ceremony, I called to confirm their flights. No answer. I texted. Nothing. That night, as I was reviewing my speech for the 100th time, my phone lit up. First came the message from my mom. "Adam, we're not coming. Watching you pretend to be a doctor sounds painful. We booked a cruise instead. Enjoy your fake moment." Then one from Aunt Kathy, the woman who once told me I was like a son to her. "We'd rather be somewhere worth celebrating. You know how boring those things are." No apology. No hesitation. Just that. I stared at my screen so long the brightness started to burn. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my phone. I just sat there, blinking at their words, feeling something in me quietly break. The next morning, I stood on stage and gave my speech. People clapped. I smiled. But the entire time, my eyes kept drifting back to those front row seats, those beautiful, velvet-lined chairs with the names of people who clearly didn't think I was worth the trip. People who had spent my entire life trying to shrink me down to their size. Later that evening, after the post-grad dinner and photo ops, after I'd shaken hands and signed programs and given hugs to friends and professors whose support meant more than they knew, I walked into my suite, closed the door, and finally let myself feel it. Not just the hurt, But the betrayal, the humiliation, the ache of knowing that I had handed my family this incredible moment on a silver platter, and they threw it in the ocean. I didn't reply to the texts. I didn't call back when my mom left a casual voicemail 2 days later saying, "Hope it went well. Send pics if you can." Instead, I made two decisions. First, I had the university print a second, ceremonial copy of my diploma. I bought a sleek black frame for it, wrapped it in gold paper, and mailed it to my mother's address, along with a printed 8 by 10 photo of those 12 empty seats, lined up perfectly under a banner that read, "Reserved for the family of Dr. Adam R." And second, I made one more change, something none of them would see coming. But I'll get to that. Because about 3 hours after that package landed at my mom's house, my phone started buzzing like crazy. Calls, texts, voicemails. One from Gary just said, "You're being dramatic, kid." One from my aunt said, "This is beyond petty." But it was my mom's voicemail, the one where she was sobbing so hard her words came out choked, that made me pause. She said, "Adam, please. I didn't know it would hurt you like this. I thought you knew we were just joking. Please call me. Please." I didn't listen to the full voicemail. I stopped halfway through, around the part where she said, "We didn't think it would matter that much," and that was enough. That one sentence, so clueless, so painfully dismissive, told me everything I needed to know. They still didn't get it. They never had. So I didn't call her back. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I turned off my phone and sat quietly at my kitchen table, flipping through the printed photo I'd taken just before the ceremony. 12 empty chairs in a perfect row. Their names still taped to the backrest like a punchline. That's when I opened my laptop, logged into my bank account, and started making changes. See, part of the reason I could afford to fly them all in first class, no less, was because of a modest inheritance I'd received from my grandmother. She passed when I was in my second year of med school. She wasn't wealthy, not by a long shot, but she left me $60,000 in a joint account my name was added to when I turned 18. She always told me, "Don't waste this on bills or nonsense. Use it when the time is right to do something that matters." And I had. Over the past 2 years, I tapped into it sparingly. A small portion covered part of my rent during my first hospital rotation. Another chunk went toward flights for interviews. But the biggest amount? I saved it, intending it for something important, something I could build with. I had started dreaming about opening a small clinic in underserved areas, maybe doing rotating weeks in lower-income neighborhoods. It wasn't much yet, but the beginnings were there. What my family didn't know was that in her will, my grandmother had initially intended to split the inheritance 3 ways, between me, my mom, and my aunt. But a year before her death, after watching the way my mom treated me during a holiday visit, she changed it. Quietly. No drama. She just rewrote the documents, removed their names, and left it all to me. "You're the only one I trust to do something good with it," she said. "They'll only waste it." And here's the twist. Because the account was set up jointly with my mom back when I was a teenager, she assumed, wrongly, that she still had access to it. In fact, she'd been telling people for months that when Adam becomes a doctor, we'll finally do that kitchen remodel. I didn't think much of it until I found out, through my cousin, that my mom and Gary had scheduled a contractor visit for the same week as my graduation. That contractor never showed up. Why? Because after I got back from graduation, I transferred every last cent of that account into a new one, solely under my name. I closed the old one, permanently. Then, for good measure, I donated a portion of what was left to the very clinic I hope to one day join. Sent them a note with my name and graduation photo. I figured if I couldn't get my family to celebrate my success, I'd at least use the fallout to help someone else who needed a win. It didn't take long for the calls to start up again. This time, they weren't just sad. They were angry. Furious, even. Gary was the first to call me screaming. "That was your mother's account. She's had her name on it since you were a kid. That money was meant for the family." I didn't even flinch. "You're right," I said. "It was meant for the family. But I guess you decided a cruise was more important than the family member who made it possible." Click. Then came Aunt Kathy. She left a voice message, her voice shrill with disbelief. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Your mother is beside herself. We didn't think." That was the part they all kept saying. We didn't think. We didn't think. We didn't think. Exactly. They didn't think. Not about what it meant to stand alone at the biggest milestone of my life. Not about what it meant to pour thousands into making a moment special, just for them to laugh it off like I was some kid playing dress up. They didn't think about the years I spent earning it, or the pride I should have felt, or the little boy in me who still wanted to hear someone say, "We're proud of you." Instead, I heard silence, followed by mockery, followed by disappointment wrapped in entitlement. So, no, I didn't feel guilty for shutting the door. I didn't regret sending that diploma and the photo of their seats. And I certainly didn't regret what I did next. Because the third thing I did, the final thing, was change the beneficiary on all my accounts, legal and medical documents, emergency contacts, the whole deal. I named someone else. My best friend Marcus, who stayed up with me through exam nights and ran mock interviews with me on his days off. Who flew himself across the country, bought his own suit, and showed up to graduation holding a sign that said, "Proud of my brother, Dr. Adam R." I took him out to dinner the night after the ceremony and handed him a sealed envelope. Inside was a copy of the legal paperwork. He blinked at it. "What's this?" I smiled. "It's me choosing my real family." He didn't say anything, just sat there quietly, holding the envelope, his eyes a little red. Meanwhile, my mom kept calling. She left one last voicemail, voice cracking, angry and sad all at once. "You think money makes you better than us? You think your little degree erases your roots? We're still your family, Adam. No matter how far you run." But she was wrong. Family isn't blood. It's not who raises you. It's who stands by you when you have nothing. It's who claps the loudest when you finally have something to show for it. And most of all, it's who doesn't disappear when the spotlight turns on you. They disappeared. So I moved forward. It was a Thursday evening, 2 weeks after graduation, when I heard the knock. I'd just gotten home from a residency orientation meeting. I was still in my white coat, stethoscope dangling around my neck like a statement I didn't have to make anymore. My apartment was quiet, warm with the smell of the takeout I'd just unpacked, and for the first time in what felt like months, I was actually looking forward to a peaceful night alone. Then came the knock. Not loud, not desperate, just confident, like whoever was on the other side assumed they had the right to be there. I opened the door halfway, and there she was, my mother. Her hair was windswept, her cheeks red from either the wind or the anger. Probably both. Behind her, standing awkwardly on the landing, was Gary, arms crossed, eyes scanning the hall like he expected security to jump out at any moment. My stomach dropped, but I didn't move. I didn't say anything. My mother blinked at me, and for a moment, it was like she didn't recognize me. Maybe it was the coat, or the quiet, or the fact that I didn't immediately open the door wider like I used to, back when I was still trying to earn a sliver of her approval. She cleared her throat. "Adam, can we come in?" I tilted my head. "Why?" She looked startled, like the question itself was offensive. "Because we need to talk. In private. Face to face." I stepped into the doorway, blocking it fully. "We could have done that 2 weeks ago. At graduation." Gary snorted. "Come on, man. Are you still holding on to that? It's not like we didn't congratulate you." "No," I said calmly. "You ridiculed me. Then prioritized a Caribbean buffet over showing up for your own son." My mother's eyes flared. "That's not fair. You didn't even give us time to explain." I raised an eyebrow. "You sent me a text that said, 'Watching you pretend to be a doctor sounds painful.' What exactly was I supposed to wait for?" The punchline. Gary stepped forward then, his voice rising. "You're being petty. That money wasn't yours to touch." "There it is," I muttered, almost smiling. "This isn't about showing up. It's about the inheritance." My mom's lips tightened. "We thought we could use some of it for the remodel. Your grandma would have wanted the family to enjoy it together." "You mean like she enjoyed being iced out by you after she got sick?" I asked, my voice sharp now. "Or how she had to move in with a friend because you didn't want to deal with her medication schedule?" My mom flinched. She hadn't expected that. But I wasn't finished. "She changed the will because she saw what I didn't. That you only show up when there's something to take. Not to support. Not to encourage. Just to grab what's left." Gary's arms uncrossed, and he stepped forward again, his voice low and angry. "You think you're so righteous, don't you? Just because you got some fancy degree, you think you're above us." I stared him down. "No, I think I finally see you clearly. And I'm done pretending you're anything more than what you've shown yourselves to be." My mom's voice cracked. "Adam, please. You're still our son." "That's funny," I said, crossing my arms. "Because 2 weeks ago, you were telling me I was pretending to be a doctor. But now that there's no check coming, I'm suddenly worth a visit?" She opened her mouth, but no words came. Just guilt. Maybe shame. It flickered in her eyes for a second, but not long enough to matter. I stepped back and closed the door halfway. You flew across the country for this, I said softly, but couldn't make it across a stage for me. That tells me everything I need to know. She stepped forward, almost like she might push the door, but stopped herself. Her voice came out small. Can't we just start over? I paused. Then I said, we already did. I just started without you. And I closed the door. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just stood there, listening to the silence on the other side, until their footsteps finally faded down the hall. The fallout didn't end there, of course. Word got around the family fast. My aunt told her sisters, who told their husbands, who told my cousins. Some call me a genius. Others call me cruel. My cousin Drew texted me, "You did what we all wish we had the guts to do." But not everyone was on my side. There were group chats I got removed from, Facebook posts I wasn't tagged in. My mom's side of the family, those who never liked grandma anyway, started acting like I'd robbed a sacred family vault. I got a message from one uncle I hadn't spoken to in 5 years that just said, "You'll regret this. Blood is blood." But I didn't regret it. I went to work. I wore my white coat with pride. I hung my diploma on the wall, not the one I mailed my mom, but a new one, framed with a photo of me and Marcus beneath it, both grinning like fools in front of the university banner. And I kept building. 3 years passed. In that time, I completed the hardest years of my life as a medical resident. Long shifts that stretched into 48 hours. Missed birthdays, missed holidays, missed sleep. But I grew. I healed patients. I held hands with the dying and the scared. I cried in elevators. I laughed in break rooms at 3 a.m. I saw things I can't unsee, and I became a doctor not just in title, but in spirit. The kind of doctor who doesn't flinch, who stands his ground, who listens before speaking, and who speaks with intention when he does. And while my professional life was growing, so was something else. That tiny idea I'd planted after graduation, the clinic, it was no longer just an idea. With Marcus's help and some generous donors I'd met through residency, I opened a small community clinic on the edge of a neglected neighborhood in the city. It wasn't flashy. 1 floor, 5 rooms, 2 doctors, a nurse, and a volunteer desk. But it was ours. A place where no one asked if you had insurance first. A place where we kept the lights on late because people didn't stop getting sick after 5 p.m. I named it after my grandmother, the Evelyn R. Wellness Center. Her photo hung in the lobby, and every day I walked in, I felt grounded. I rarely thought of my family anymore. It wasn't even avoidance, it was just peace. The kind that comes when you stop chasing something that was never running toward you in the first place. But peace has a way of being interrupted. It was late October when the email came. Subject: Family Reunion, 75th birthday for Uncle Rich. The message was sent to a long CC list, but it still began with a chipper, "Hey everyone, hope you're all doing great. We're putting together something special for Uncle Rich's 75th, potluck style, backyard bash, you know how it goes." I almost deleted it on sight. But then I noticed something at the bottom, tacked on almost as an afterthought. "P.S. Adam, we all really hope you come. It's been too long. Your mom said she misses you." It wasn't signed by my mom. It was signed by my cousin Olivia, the family diplomat. I didn't reply. 2 days later, a handwritten letter showed up at the clinic. No return address. Neat cursive I hadn't seen in years. "Adam, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, and maybe I don't deserve to ask for anything. But if you can find it in your heart to come, I'd be grateful. Not to talk about the past, not to argue. Just to see you. Just to see my son again. I've changed. I swear I have. I know it's late, but I'm still your mother. Love, Mom." She underlined love twice. I stared at that word for a long time. Then I folded the letter, slipped it back in the envelope, and tucked it in a drawer I hadn't opened in over a year. The one where I kept the photo of the empty chairs from graduation. I didn't look at the photo. I just closed the drawer again. And I went. I don't fully know why. Curiosity, maybe. Or a desire to finally close a door properly. Not slam it. Not bolt it. Just close it. The reunion was at a rented hall. Balloons, cheap catering, plastic tablecloths, exactly the kind of thing my family loved. The parking lot was already full by the time I arrived. I stepped out of my car in a crisp button-up and slacks and felt the fall wind bite through the air. Inside, it was noisy. Kids running, people laughing. The DJ was playing a too loud oldies playlist, and someone had already spilled punch on the gift table. The moment I stepped inside, heads turned. There was a beat of silence, a collective intake of breath, as if seeing me triggered some ancient family muscle memory. Someone whispered, "Is that Adam?" I just nodded politely, moved toward the back wall. I didn't come for small talk. I came to see if there was anything worth salvaging. Then I saw her. My mother. She looked older, softer around the edges, less put together than I remembered. Her hair was streaked with silver, and she wore a pale blue cardigan over a dress that didn't quite fit right. Her eyes locked on mine like she was afraid I might vanish. "Adam," she breathed. "Hi," I said. She took a step forward. "You came." I did. Tears sprang up instantly, like she'd been holding them in for 3 years. I didn't know if you'd even open the letter. I thought. I waited. For an apology. For ownership. For something more than guilt. Instead, she reached for my hand. "I've missed you so much." I gently stepped back. "You missed the chance to show up when it mattered." She flinched. "I'm not here to fight," I added. "I just wanted you to see me. Not out of spite. Just so you know that I'm doing fine. Without your support. Without the money you expected. Without any of the things you thought I needed you for." A pause. She lowered her eyes. "I deserve that." "Yes," I said simply. "You did." Then I handed her a small envelope. Inside was a folded pamphlet, the Evelyn R. Wellness Center, with a handwritten note that said, "In case you ever want to understand what I've been building, and why I stopped waiting for you to be proud of me." She took it with shaking hands. I didn't linger. I stayed long enough to greet Uncle Rich, long enough to prove that I wasn't hiding, that I'd grown roots without them, that I'd built something out of the very silence they left me in. As I walked back to my car, someone called out behind me. It was Marcus. I didn't invite him. He just showed up, said he figured I shouldn't have to face them alone. He held up a coffee from our favorite place and said, "I figured you'd want an exit drink." I laughed for the first time that day. "Let's go," I said. "I've got clinic work in the morning." As we drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror one last time. My mother stood at the doorway of the hall, pamphlet pressed to her chest, eyes locked on the car as it disappeared down the road. She didn't wave. Neither did I. Because some endings don't need closure. They just need peace. And I finally had mine. My name's Ryan, I'm 22, and last weekend was supposed to be one of the biggest milestones of my life. After 4 years of hard work, late nights, summer courses, part-time jobs to help cover tuition, I finally graduated from college. I wasn't expecting fireworks or a parade, but I definitely didn't expect what I got. And I definitely wasn't expecting it to break something inside me that I didn't even realize was holding on by a thread. I come from a family that, on the surface, looks pretty normal. Suburban house, family dog. Dad works in finance, mom teaches kindergarten, one younger sister named Maddie who just turned 20 and is the undisputed golden child of the household. Growing up, it was always go easy on Maddie, she's younger, or let Maddie go first, she's just a kid. And I did. I gave her my last cookie, let her have the front seat, taught her how to ride a bike, proofread her essays in high school. I didn't think much of it. I figured that once we were both adults, things would balance out. I was wrong. 2 years ago, Maddie graduated high school. You'd have thought she got into Harvard, not the local community college. They threw a massive backyard party. I'm talking tents, string lights, one of those photo booths with props, a catered buffet from her favorite Italian place. Congrats Maddie banner big enough to cover the side of the house, and what felt like half the neighborhood invited. They even hired a DJ. I remember standing there helping my mom arrange the cupcakes, sweating in the June heat, thinking, this is kind of overkill, right? But hey, it was Maddie's day. So I smiled and kept refilling the lemonade. Fast forward to this year, my turn to graduate. I didn't ask for much. I didn't even want a party, just a small dinner with the family to celebrate. I was the first person on my dad's side to finish college, and the first on my mom's side to do it without taking any student loans. I thought that might matter. Apparently, it didn't. The morning of my graduation, I got a quick, "We're proud of you," text from my parents. Maddie didn't even text, just like the Instagram photo I posted of me in my cap and gown. I walked across that stage, shook hands, smiled for the cameras, and looked out into the crowd. My best friend Jake and his parents had driven up for the ceremony. They waved and cheered. My own family? Nowhere in sight. At first, I made excuses for them. Maybe traffic was bad. Maybe they had to park far away. Maybe something came up. But when I got back to my apartment and checked my phone, I saw a message from my mom. "We'll do a little dinner tonight at home. Nothing fancy, but hope you're hungry." I blinked at the screen. Nothing fancy? I'd graduated with honors. I'd pulled myself through 4 years of stress and exams and internships. Maddie got balloon arches and catered trays of chicken parmesan. I got a smiley face and a vague promise of dinner. Still, I didn't want to be dramatic. I told myself, it's not about the party. It's about being together. So I packed up my things and headed home. When I walked through the door, I knew. There was no smell of food, no laughter, no clinking glasses. Just Maddie scrolling on her phone on the couch, Dad watching golf in the living room, and Mom emerging from the kitchen holding a single pizza box. "Happy graduation," she said with an awkward smile, placing the box on the counter like it was some grand reveal. "We got your favorite, pepperoni." Maddie didn't even look up. "You're lucky," she said. Dad wanted to just pick up McDonald's. I looked around the room. No streamers. No card. No little sign on the fridge. Not even a soda to go with the pizza. My diploma was still rolled up in my bag, and I felt like it might as well have been a napkin. Mom must have seen something on my face, because she quickly grabbed a ketchup bottle from the fridge, squirted out the word "congrats" on a plate next to the pizza, and added a pathetic little heart at the end. "There. Now it's festive," she said brightly. I stood there, stunned, like I was watching someone else's life. I sat down, took a slice, and forced a smile. "Thanks," I said, because I didn't know what else to say. Then I pulled out my phone, turned the camera on, and snapped a selfie with the slice and the ketchup plate in the background. I captioned it, "Dream Big, Kids," and posted it to my story. Nobody in the house noticed. They just kept watching TV. That was when I excused myself to take a walk. Instead, I got in my car, drove to the Marriott by the highway, and used the emergency credit card my grandparents gave me for real emergencies to book a room. I figured this qualified. I didn't even unpack. I just sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the cheap hotel painting above the desk, wondering how long I'd been fooling myself. How long I'd been telling myself that once I achieved something big enough, they'd see me. That this family, my family, would finally treat me like I mattered. That if I was good enough, smart enough, helpful enough, successful enough, they'd look at me the way they looked at Maddie. But they didn't. They never had. And maybe they never would. An hour later, my phone buzzed. It was my mom. "No, where are you?" Or, "Is everything okay? Just, are you coming home?" I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to respond with something scathing. Another part of me just wanted to go to sleep and forget the whole day ever happened. But instead, I just left her on read. I lay back on the stiff hotel bed, phone in hand, and began scrolling through photos on my camera roll. There were so many pictures of me with Maddie, helping her move into her dorm, cheering her on at her dance recital, driving her to job interviews. But when I scrolled back to the photos of me, there were barely any. Most were selfies. No one ever really took pictures of me unless I asked. That thought sat heavy on my chest like a weight I hadn't noticed until now. The next morning, I turned off my phone. I didn't check my messages. I didn't tell anyone where I was. I just sat in that hotel room, eating bad continental breakfast and watching cable news on low volume, letting the silence wash over me. That's when something shifted. Not a breakdown, more like a quiet realization. I didn't want to go back. Not just to the house. To them. I was done playing second string in a family where I'd been the one holding the line for years. Done being the fallback, the afterthought, the kid who was only acknowledged when it was convenient. And that was the moment I started to plan what I'd do next. I stayed at the hotel for 2 more nights. I told myself it was just to get some space, but really, I think I needed to mourn. Not a person, but the version of my family I'd been pretending existed. The one I kept waiting for, hoping would show up someday. I spent those 2 days in silence, letting my phone buzz until the battery died, reading books I hadn't touched since freshman year, and eating whatever lukewarm food I could get delivered to the front desk. It was the most peace I'd felt in years. When I finally checked out, I didn't drive home. I didn't even tell them I was leaving the hotel. Instead, I drove to Jake's apartment, my best friend since middle school, and crashed on his couch. He didn't ask many questions, just handed me a beer and said, "Took you long enough?" He always knew. He'd seen it firsthand. The way my family treated me like the spare tire of the family vehicle. Only useful in an emergency, and even then, kind of an inconvenience. "You're not gonna believe this," I told him as I scrolled through Maddie's social media. While I was ghosting the group chat, my parents and Maddie went to a vineyard the day after my graduation. Matching outfits, cheese boards, a banner that said Maddie's summer kickoff. Jake raised an eyebrow. "Your summer kickoff should have been your graduation weekend." "Exactly. She hijacked it." "No, they gave it to her." That's when I realized this wasn't new. Maddie had always had a way of bending moments to herself, and my parents never stopped her. When I got accepted into college, Maddie cried because I was leaving her behind. When I got a scholarship, Mom told me not to brag about money in front of her. When I made the dean's list, Dad said, "Well, it's not like you had a job while doing it like Maddie does." Jake didn't say much. He didn't have to. He just looked at me, shook his head, and said, "Man, that's messed up." That night, I sat up staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the things I'd done for them. Paid half the electric bill while I was in school because Dad had some unexpected expenses. Covered Maddie's books for a semester when she forgot to register for her financial aid on time. Came home every break to help with yard work and babysit our younger cousins while Maddie went on road trips. I did it without resentment. At least, I thought I did. But now, it all felt like a long list of sacrifices they expected from me, not things they appreciated. The next morning, I turned my phone back on. Dozens of messages flooded in. "Mom, we're worried. Are you okay? Dad, this is immature. We tried our best." "Maddie, seriously? It was just a pizza. You're being dramatic." "Mom again. Can you come home and talk like an adult?" "Dad again. We need to have a family conversation." That last one nearly made me laugh out loud. Now they wanted to talk? But what really got to me wasn't the tone of concern. It was the assumption that I'd come back. That I'd cool off, return home, and fall back into place. Like I always did. Like I always had. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and started putting something else together. A resume. A new one. Then I started applying for jobs. Not just any jobs, but ones out of state. Far away. Seattle, Boston, Austin. I didn't care. I just knew that if I stayed in that town, I'd be pulled back in again. And I was done being their fallback. A few days later, Jake helped me move what little I owned out of the house. We waited until midday, when I knew they'd all be at work or out. I didn't want a confrontation. Not yet. I just wanted my things. I found my room untouched, the pizza box still sitting in the kitchen trash like a mocking trophy. As I packed up books, clothes, and a few framed photos I actually liked, I noticed something strange. One of the kitchen drawers was locked. It was the one Mom always said held family documents. Curious, I found the tiny key taped under the junk drawer where she used to hide it when I was a kid. I opened it. Inside were a bunch of envelopes, bank statements, tax returns, and what looked like insurance papers. I flipped through without much interest until I saw something that made my stomach twist. A college fund statement with my name on it. One that had been closed 3 years ago. I scanned the page again. The account had thousands in it. More than enough to have paid for my final year. Closed by M. Dawson. Maddie. I kept reading. Turns out, the fund had been split. But not evenly. They'd transferred the remainder to a new account, one under Maddie's name. And guess what? It wasn't a college fund. It was a small business fund. My parents had helped her start her Etsy business selling beaded jewelry. With my college fund, I felt the blood drain from my face. All this time I thought we were scraping by. That I was being noble, paying for school myself, helping out when I could. Meanwhile, they were funneling my future into Maddie's bracelet hobby. That pizza party wasn't just an oversight. It was an exclamation point. I snapped photos of everything, stuffed the papers back where I found them, and locked the drawer again. By the time I left the house, I wasn't sad anymore. I was something else. Focused. Determined. Jake helped me load the last box into the car. "You good?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. "But I will be." I moved into a short-term rental across town, just long enough to wrap things up. I had no intention of staying long. I needed to disappear in stages. First emotionally, then physically. I cut off their access to my bank account. I'd been listed as a secondary on some joint utilities for years. I pulled out my name from anything shared. Insurance, billing, subscriptions. Changed every password. Clean slate. But I wasn't done. I had one more move to make. One they'd never see coming. Not just revenge. Not just an exit. But something permanent. Maddie's birthday was always a production. Not just a party, an event. Growing up, her birthdays were basically local holidays in our house. One year, Mom rented out a trampoline park. Another, they flew her and her friends to Disneyland. And even as adults, nothing had changed. Last year, they surprised her with a weekend in Napa. All expenses paid. This year, she was turning 21, and I already knew what was coming. A blowout bash, booze, catered everything, and 100 people pretending she was the second coming of Audrey Hepburn. And I had no intention of showing up, at least, not in the way they expected. For the 2 weeks leading up to her birthday, I played it cool. No posts. No responses. My mom texted occasionally with things like, "Hope you're feeling better. We miss you." Maddie sent a single message. "Are you still being weird, or can I expect you at the party?" I didn't reply. I let them sit in their silence and pretend they still had access to me. Meanwhile, I got busy. I compiled every photo I took of the documents from the locked drawer, the college fund transfer, the account closures, the banking records showing how they moved the money under Maddie's name. I even dug up old emails from when I first asked Mom about help with tuition sophomore year. She told me then, "We just don't have the money, honey. You're gonna have to push through like your dad," and I did. Lies. But the real cherry on top came when I checked the Secretary of State's website and found out that the LLC Maddie was using to sell her custom jewelry was registered under Dad's name. Meaning, it was a family business. Meaning, they all knew what they did. This wasn't a Maddie thing. This was a them thing. The day before her party, I wrote an email. Short, professional, cold. I CC'd my parents, my aunt, and a few other relatives who always made excuses for them. I attached everything: photos, financials, screenshots. The subject line read, "Why I'm not coming to Maddie's birthday." The body of the email simply said, "For years, I thought the problem was me. That I wasn't doing enough, being enough, achieving enough. I see now that no matter how hard I worked, it was never about what I did. It was about who you chose to prioritize. You took the funds set aside for my future and gave it to Maddie. You told me to be grateful for a pizza while handing her my college savings on a silver platter. I've attached the proof. No one has to take my word for it. I won't be attending the party, or any future ones. Consider this my RSVP permanently declined." Then I hit send. Jake was the one who kept an eye on the fallout for me. I refused to check the group chat, but he did, and boy, did it implode. My mom called me 6 times in a row. Left voicemails that started calm and concerned and slowly spiraled into frantic and accusatory. "You took those documents out of context," she snapped in one. "That money wasn't just yours. We had to make a family decision." Maddie's response was even more on brand. She posted on her Instagram story a few hours before the party started, "Haters gonna hate. Some people can't stand to see others happy." She followed that up with a group photo of her in a white birthday dress, surrounded by friends and cousins. But something was off. The party looked half empty. A few people I knew, our cousins on Dad's side, had commented, "So sorry, won't make it after all," and got the email. "Wish you'd told us sooner." The next day, I got a text from Aunt Valerie. One sentence: "You didn't deserve that, Ryan. I'm so sorry." It was the first apology I'd received from anyone in the family since all of this began. But even with that small win, I still wasn't done. Because while the birthday drama was satisfying in its own right, it didn't close anything. It just cracked the surface. I needed distance, permanence, a clean break. So when I got the job offer from a company in Chicago, a good one, better pay than I dared to hope for, I accepted on the spot. I didn't tell my parents, didn't tell Maddie, didn't post about it. I just packed, quietly, deliberately, the way you do when you're not just moving houses, but leaving behind a version of yourself. 3 days before my move, Dad called. First time in weeks. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to hear it. "Ryan," he said. His voice was stiff, formal, like we were strangers. "Your mom and I, we read everything. You blindsided us. You stole from me." I replied, calm, measured. "That wasn't a blindside. That was exposure." He exhaled sharply through his nose. "You have no idea how hard it was to make that decision. Your sister needed help. So did I." There was a pause, a long, choking silence. Then he said, "You don't have to leave. You could still be part of this family if you just..." I hung up. That was the last conversation I had with either of my parents. The next morning, I loaded my car and hit the road. But right before I left town, I did one more thing. I stopped by the university office and asked if I could donate to the college fund program. I gave a small amount, nothing flashy, but I attached a note for the kid whose family chose someone else. This is so they don't have to be their own backup plan. And then I left. I arrived in Chicago with nothing but 3 suitcases, a used Honda, and a sense of finality that somehow made me feel weightless. I didn't cry when I crossed the state line. I didn't romanticize what I left behind. I just drove, letting the flat Midwest landscape pass me by like a long exhale. I'd spent my whole life shrinking myself to fit inside a family mold that never had space for me. Leaving wasn't running, it was releasing. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't holding my breath. The job was solid, mid-sized marketing firm, great culture, decent pay. More importantly, it gave me the clean slate I was desperate for. New coworkers, no awkward history. Nobody there knew me as Maddie's older brother or the quiet one. Just Ryan. Just the guy who showed up on time, worked hard, and had a sarcastic streak that made the intern laugh during staff meetings. I rented a tiny apartment on the third floor of an old brownstone with creaky floors and peeling paint, but I loved it. Every night, I'd fall asleep hearing the rumble of the L train in the distance, a reminder that life was still moving, still buzzing, and I was finally a part of it, not an afterthought sitting quietly on the sidelines. For months, I didn't hear a word from my parents or Maddie. No calls, no texts. It was eerie, like they'd scrubbed me off the family whiteboard the way you'd wipe down a to-do list. And I was fine with that, at first. But then Thanksgiving rolled around, and even though I had no intention of going back, the silence hit harder than I expected. Jake invited me to spend it with his family, and I went. His mom hugged me like I just returned from war. His dad handed me a plate piled high before I even sat down. They made jokes, asked about my job, poured me a drink when I mentioned Chicago snow. They treated me like I belonged. That night, when everyone had gone to bed and Jake and I were playing video games in the basement like we were teenagers again, he turned to me and said, "You ever think they'll come around?" I didn't even pause. No, and that was the honest truth. Because people like them don't change. They pivot, they spin, they rewrite history, but they don't change. Still, there was a part of me, some small sliver, that wondered if they'd reach out during Christmas. They didn't. Instead, Maddie posted a series of Instagram stories showing off her cozy family Christmas. Matching pajamas. Dad playing guitar by the fire. Mom holding up a new bracelet from Maddie's line with a caption that read, "So proud of my girl's hustle." There was no seat left at that table. Not even metaphorically. January came, and with it, a letter. A physical letter, which was so unlike them I almost thought it was a scam. The handwriting on the envelope was unmistakably my dad's. I stared at it for a long time before I opened it. Inside was a neatly typed letter on my father's work stationery. It was a masterpiece of passive aggression and carefully worded guilt. He wrote, "We hope you've had time to reflect. Your mother is still deeply hurt by the way things ended. We understand you felt slighted, but the truth is, we always made decisions with the whole family in mind. Perhaps you'll come to see that in time. Maddie is engaged now," he proposed on New Year's Eve. "We're planning an engagement party this spring. Of course, you're welcome to come. Family is family. Don't let one bad season ruin decades of history." I laughed out loud. I actually laughed. Because even now, after everything, I was the problem. I was the one who needed to reflect. They hadn't done anything wrong. They just made family decisions. Apparently, funneling my college fund into Maddie's jewelry business was just another spreadsheet line item in the Dawson family budget. I didn't respond. I didn't congratulate Maddie. I didn't show up to the engagement party. What I did do was thrive. I got promoted 6 months into the job. My boss said I had initiative and backbone, which was ironic considering those were the very traits my parents used to say made me difficult. I made new friends. I found a ramen place down the block that knew my order before I said it. I joined a community book club that mostly devolved into debates over which characters deserved redemption arcs. I even met someone, Alyssa. She had curly hair, a nervous laugh, and a way of asking questions that made me feel seen, not sized up. We took things slow, real slow, and I was okay with that. Then came the wedding invite. Cream-colored cardstock, gold foil lettering. You were joyfully invited to celebrate the union of Madison Dawson and Kyle Reardon. No, dear brother. No handwritten note. No acknowledgement that we hadn't spoken in nearly 2 years. Just a printed RSVP card with 2 options, accept with joy, decline with regret. I stared at that checkbox for a long time. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I picked up the phone and called my grandmother, Dad's mom. She was in her 80s now and lived in a retirement community in Arizona. She'd always sent me birthday cards, even when my parents forgot. We hadn't spoken in months, but she picked up on the second ring. "Oh, Ryan," she breathed. "I was hoping you'd call." We talked for nearly an hour. She told me she'd heard bits and pieces, that she didn't understand why my parents had drawn a line in the sand over something so clearly unfair. that she'd tried to bring it up, but they'd brushed it off as me needing space. She paused at one point and said, "You know, I never saw you as the quiet one. You were the observer, the anchor, and they used you like a life raft until they didn't need you anymore." I don't think anyone had ever said something that true about me. She asked if I was going to the wedding. I said, no, and then I asked her something I hadn't planned to. "Would you like to come visit me sometime? In Chicago?" There was a pause, and then a laugh. "Ryan, I'd love nothing more." I didn't RSVP to the wedding. But on the same day Maddie walked down the aisle, I was walking with my grandma down Michigan Avenue, showing her the bean, introducing her to deep dish, and laughing over the pigeons trying to steal her hot dog. She said it was the most fun she'd had in years. That night, I posted a single photo on social media, just me and her on a park bench, holding matching mugs of hot cocoa. I captioned it, "Found the family that shows up." It got one like from Maddie's old college roommate. I don't know if she meant to do it or if it was a silent nod, but it made me smile. And that was the moment I knew. I didn't miss them. I missed the idea of them, the hope that someday they'd be what I needed. But that hope was a trap. And the freedom I'd found on the other side of it was something I wouldn't trade for anything, not even an apology. Months passed. Seasons changed. Life moved on. Maddie announced her pregnancy on social media a year later. There were balloons and glitter and a gender reveal that involved a confetti cannon in their backyard. My parents posed, beaming in matching grandma and grandpa shirts. I didn't feel a thing. No envy. No bitterness. Just distance. Healthy, necessary distance. They had their world, their curated version of family. And I had mine, quieter, smaller, but honest. And in the end, that was enough. Because I didn't just walk away from the party. I walked into something better. Something real. Something that, for the first time in my life, felt like mine. My name's Mark. I'm 33. I proposed to my fiancée, Haley, last spring on the pier where we had our first date. We'd been together for almost 5 years, and she'd stood by me through some brutal chapters: job loss, family chaos, health scares. She was my safe place. So when she said yes, I felt like everything had finally clicked into place. We planned a small, elegant ceremony at a vineyard about 40 minutes outside the city. Haley's family was supportive, sweet, and involved, but not overbearing. Mine, on the other hand, well, let's just say subtlety and grace were never in their vocabulary. The first crack in the wall came barely a month after we sent out save the dates. I got a call from my mom, her voice tight and passive-aggressive in that way only she had perfected. "Sweetheart," she said, drawing the word out like she was already exhausted by whatever came next. "Do you really think a wedding in May is the best idea?" I paused. Why wouldn't it be? There was a beat of silence before she sighed, the kind of sigh that let me know I was about to be guilt-tripped into something absurd. "It's just that, well, your brother's graduation is in early June, and you know how sensitive he is about people stealing his thunder. My brother, Tyler, is 25, the golden boy, the one who somehow turned being average at everything into a full-blown identity people were expected to applaud. He changed college majors 5 times, failed out of 2 different universities, and finally earned a degree in communications and lifestyle branding from a school I had to Google to confirm was real. Despite all that, my parents still acted like he was the next Steve Jobs. Every family dinner revolved around Tyler's latest minor achievement. Ty got a job interview today. Ty's starting a podcast. Ty's moving back into focus on his mental clarity. And now, apparently, my wedding was a threat to his moment. I tried to be diplomatic. "Mom, the wedding's been planned for months. And it's not like we scheduled it during his graduation. It's literally 4 weeks earlier." But that didn't matter. She gently, then not so gently, suggested we push the date back to July. "It would just show that you care about your brother's feelings," she said. "He's been working so hard." I bit my tongue. Working hard? Tyler hadn't held a job longer than 6 months. Meanwhile, Haley and I were budgeting every dime, working overtime, juggling venue bookings, family schedules, and a mortgage. But sure, let's cancel everything for the fragile ego of the guy who once cried because our cousin beat him in Mario Kart. I told her we weren't moving the date. That's when the cold front truly set in. Calls dropped from daily to once a week. My dad didn't return my texts. My younger cousin, who I'd always been close with, suddenly said she couldn't be a bridesmaid because things were weird with the family. And then came the dinner. It was supposed to be a calm Sunday meal at my parents' house, a tradition that had limped along since I moved out. Haley and I showed up with a bottle of wine and polite smiles. Tyler was already there, lounging on the couch like he owned the place, wearing sunglasses indoors and scrolling through TikTok like he was allergic to eye contact. My mom ushered us into the kitchen and immediately started in with a syrupy tone. "Mark, honey, your father and I were talking, and we think it might just be better for everyone if you postpone the wedding until next year." I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. "Ty's really been struggling lately," she continued. "He needs support right now, not a big distraction. And your wedding, it's a lot." "A lot of what?" I asked, still trying to keep my voice level. "A lot of attention," my dad cut in, suddenly appearing in the doorway. "Look, son, you've had your moments. Now it's your brother's turn. Be a team player." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were seriously asking me to cancel the most important day of my life. Not just reschedule, but cancel, because my brother was apparently too emotionally fragile to exist in a world where something wasn't about him. Haley squeezed my hand under the table. I glanced at her, and she didn't need to say anything. Her eyes said everything. She was tired. Tired of trying to be gracious to people who saw her as an inconvenience. Tired of bending herself into a smile while being treated like an outsider. That night, we sat in our car for a long time after we left their house. I stared at the dashboard. My fingers gripped the steering wheel, white-knuckled. "Are we really going to do this?" I asked. "No," Haley said quietly. "You don't deserve that. We don't deserve that." And just like that, the idea began to take root. Not canceling our wedding, canceling them. Not in some dramatic, scream-filled fight, but quietly, surgically. If they wanted to make this a war over attention, fine. But I was done playing the loyal son while being treated like a supporting character in Tyler's ego parade. The next day, I started making calls. Not to change the date, to change the guest list. I called the venue and asked how we could adjust for a smaller group. I emailed our caterer. I took a long walk with Haley and we went through the guest list with a highlighter and a bottle of wine, crossing off names like we were performing a long overdue exorcism. When the new invites went out, my phone lit up like a slot machine. Texts, calls, passive-aggressive emails. My mom sent a 5-paragraph message titled "Deeply Hurt" that began with, "I hope you're proud of what you've done to this family," and ended with, "Your brother is in tears." I didn't reply. Then came the message from Tyler. "I can't believe you would do this to me," he wrote. "You've always been jealous, but this is a new low. Don't expect me to show up when your life falls apart." I showed the text to Haley. She didn't laugh. She just nodded and said, "Good. Let them be exactly who they are." But the real meltdown, the one that made it all worth it, came a few days later, and it happened in a way I didn't expect. It was a Wednesday. I'd just gotten home from work and was halfway through making dinner when I heard pounding on the front door. Not knocking, full-on pounding, like someone was trying to break in with their fists. Haley looked up from the couch, eyes wide. I opened the door and there stood my mother, Dad right behind her, and Tyler sulking in the car parked crooked across our driveway like he couldn't even be bothered to pretend he wasn't sulking. "Mark," my mother snapped, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "What is wrong with you?" I shut the door slowly, turning to face them. "Good evening to you too. Don't play games," she spat. "Your father and I just found out from your Aunt Debbie's Facebook that the invitations were updated. You uninvited your own family." Haley stood now, arms crossed, silent but alert behind me. I kept my tone calm. "Yes, I did." She blinked. "You what?" "I uninvited the people who made it clear they don't support our relationship, our wedding, or our choices. That includes the people who told me to cancel my wedding so my brother could feel special about graduating college 7 years late." My dad stepped forward, shoulders tense. "You're being childish." "No," I said. "I was being childish every time I let you guilt me into sacrificing for Tyler. Every time I let you ignore Haley. Every time I let you rewrite family events to fit his ego. I'm 33 years old, and this is the first time in my life I've made a boundary with you. And look how fast you came running to smash it." That shut them up. For a second. Then my mom laughed. Actually laughed. "So this is her," she sneered, gesturing to Haley. "This is the influence." I knew it. I knew she was turning you against us. "You used to be such a good son." "I used to be a doormat," I said. "Not anymore." "You owe this family," my dad growled. "We put you through school." "No," I said, sharper now. You took out a loan and reminded me every year that I was lucky you didn't make me pay it back. Meanwhile, I paid Tyler's credit card bill 3 times without a thank you. I helped cover your mortgage when Dad was out of work. I co-signed that lease for your second car. Do you remember any of that? They stared at me, blank-faced. I do, I said. So if we're talking about debts, yours are overdue. That's when Tyler finally got out of the car. He stormed up the driveway, arms waving like some minor celebrity denied entry to a nightclub. This is all because of your ego, he shouted. You think you're better than me? I think I don't have to prove anything to you anymore, I said. Everyone says you're selfish, he snapped. Mom and Dad are ashamed. Great, I said. Then I guess we finally agree on something. You should all go. My mom gasped, like I'd just struck her. You're kicking us out. No, I said. I'm asking you to leave. You'll know if you're ever actually kicked out. There's still a difference, for now. They didn't move. I'm not going to stand here and argue, I added. We're done. We've made our decision. If you want to be part of our lives, it won't be on your terms anymore. Haley stepped forward now, her voice calm and firm. You're not the victims here, but you can choose to stop being villains. That was the final straw. My mom turned red, mouth twitching, eyes glossy with angry tears. She whirled around and marched back to the car. My dad followed, muttering something about ungratefulness. Tyler lingered for a moment. You'll regret this, he muttered. Maybe, I said, but not today. Then he left. The silence afterward was deafening and beautiful. Haley exhaled slowly and wrapped her arms around me. I'm sorry it had to happen like that, she said. I'm not, I replied. I'm just sorry it took me this long. But of course, that wasn't the end. 3 days later, the emails began. Not from my parents, but from extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins. Some were polite, others furious. A few offered constructive criticism that was really just veiled insults about my emotional immaturity or wedding entitlement. One cousin I hadn't spoken to in years told me that family is about forgiveness, not cancellation. Another sent me a Bible quote. Cute. Then came the real kicker. My mother posted a cryptic status online. It read, sometimes, the children you raise turn into strangers. We'll be attending a graduation instead of a wedding this year. Pray for our broken hearts. It was followed by a crying emoji and a family photo from 10 years ago, me included, like I was some long-lost soul. The comments rolled in. I saw people I grew up with, church friends, neighbors, family friends, all chiming in with condolences, outrage, sympathy. You were the best parents. Some kids just forget who raised them. Prayers for healing. Blah, blah, blah. I didn't comment. I didn't even screenshot it. I just blocked her. And then something unexpected happened. Haley's mom forwarded me a text. Apparently my dad had reached out to her behind my back, asking if there was any way to talk sense into Mark, and if they still had time to fix this before he destroys the family. She replied with one sentence. He's not destroying anything. He's finally rebuilding. But the real turning point, the moment I knew I was past the point of no return, was when I got a call from the vineyard. Apparently, someone had called and tried to impersonate me, saying the wedding was canceled and asking for a full refund. They gave my mother's name. I stood there, phone in hand, in stunned silence. I should have been angry, and I was, but more than anything, I felt a strange kind of peace. Like a fog had finally lifted. They weren't going to stop. Not because they cared, but because they couldn't stand the idea of losing control. I called the venue back. I confirmed everything was still on. Then I called my lawyer. The lawyer's name was Dana Chin. Sharp, pragmatic, and no nonsense. The kind of person who didn't blink when I told her the full story. I'd met her once through a friend during a work dispute, and even then, she'd left an impression. When I explained everything, the pressure, the harassment, the impersonation attempt with the venue, she didn't flinch. They impersonated you over the phone? She asked, fingers flying across her keyboard. Yeah, I said. The venue flagged it because the caller didn't know the deposit amount or Haley's last name. They asked weird questions too, like if the guest list had changed. Someone was fishing for info. Dana looked up. That's not just petty family drama. That's fraud. If they tried to cancel a legally binding contract in your name, you could have been out thousands. Can we do anything? I asked. She smirked. Oh, we can do a lot. That's how the cease and desist letters were born. Not out of anger, not really. They were a shield. Legal, cold, and final. One letter to each of them. My parents, Tyler, and the two aunts who'd been most vocal online. The message was clear: stop interfering or face consequences. Dana made sure it was airtight: impersonation, harassment, defamation. She even included a polite but firm reminder that any further tampering with our wedding would be documented. Haley and I mailed them out together, hand-delivered at the post office. There was a strange sense of closure in dropping those envelopes in the slot. Like saying, "You wanted a reaction? This is it." But the quiet didn't last. It never does with people like that. About a week later, my cousin Ellie, one of the few sane members of the family, sent me a voice note. "Hey Mark, just a heads up. Your mom was crying at church today. Said you'd gone full legal on the family and were threatening lawsuits. People were trying to comfort her, but she kept saying you were being manipulated and she was scared you'd never speak to them again. Oh, and she said the wedding might not be real. That it's all a stunt to hurt Tyler." I didn't even know how to respond to that. She said, "What?" Haley asked, staring at me. "That the wedding might not be real." Haley raised an eyebrow. "So what? I'm fake now?" I sighed. "Apparently you're an illusion created to traumatize my family." She snorted. "Well, I am quite dramatic. Maybe I should wear a red gown and arrive in a cloud of smoke. It would have been funny if it didn't sting so much." They were rewriting the narrative in real time, warping facts until they could see themselves as victims. I could practically hear my mom's voice in my head, explaining to a room full of sympathetic neighbors how her son had gone off the deep end and was under the influence of a woman who never really fit into the family. What they didn't know was that every time they said something like that, every time they played the martyr or twisted the truth, they were giving me more fuel. And then came the voicemail. I hadn't spoken to my father since the doorstep argument. He'd been quiet, eerily so. But 2 weeks after the cease and desist, his number popped up on my phone. I didn't answer. He left a message. "Mark, look, I don't agree with how your mother's been handling things. Or your brother. But you've escalated this into something ugly. Lawyers? Legal threats? You know that's not how family handles things. If you go through with this wedding without us there, you're cutting ties. You understand that, right? There won't be a way back." There it was. The unspoken threat made spoken. I replayed it 3 times. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to remember the tone. That tight, controlled disappointment. The same voice he'd used when I told him I wanted to be a writer instead of joining his accounting firm. When I didn't attend Tyler's 3rd graduation ceremony because I had surgery. When I said no to co-signing a second loan for Tyler's branding agency. He thought this was just another phase I'd apologize for later. It wasn't. A week out from the wedding, Haley and I had final fittings for our outfits. Her dress was stunning, simple, elegant, not flashy. She didn't cry when she saw herself in it. She didn't gasp or get breathless like they show in movies. She just smiled, small and certain, and said, "Yeah, this is the one." That night, while we ate takeout on the floor of our half-furnished living room, I checked my email. One unread message. Subject, "From your brother, a final attempt." Against my better judgment, I opened it. It was longer than I expected. No insults. No yelling. Just a paragraph that read, "I don't know what's happening to you. I don't get why you'd throw away everything over a wedding. But I talked to Mom and Dad, and they're saying they're not coming. I think that's wrong. You shouldn't have to choose. If you want, I'll talk to them. Just let me come. Just don't shut me out too." It should have felt like a peace offering. But something about it felt off. Too clean. Too rehearsed. Like he wrote it after someone told him to try one last time. Haley leaned over my shoulder as I reread it. "He didn't apologize," she said quietly. "No," I replied. "He didn't." And then, like clockwork, came the second email. This one wasn't from Tyler. It was from the Vineyard. Subject, "Urgent, unauthorized guest list access attempt apparently. Someone called again, this time asking to add people back onto the guest list using my name. They'd asked about table placements, if the original head table seating with family could be restored, and even mentioned special dietary restrictions for the groom's mother. They'd used Tyler's phone number. I closed my laptop and sat in stunned silence for a moment, until Haley broke it with a quiet, "They still think they can sneak their way back in." "No," I said, standing. "They think this is a negotiation." I picked up my phone, and I called Dana. Dana didn't hesitate. After I explained everything, the latest impersonation attempt, the cryptic emails, the voicemail from my father, she asked for a timeline, receipts, and screenshots. Within hours, she sent over a formal warning addressed to Tyler, advising him that any further interference would result in legal action for identity misrepresentation and attempted contract manipulation. She also attached a list of rights Haley and I had as clients of the venue, including the right to press charges if someone attempted to impersonate us again. By now, I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. Just done. Fully, finally, done. They'd shown me who they were at every turn. The desperation, the manipulation, the lack of basic decency. But more than that, the assumption that I would always bend, always fold, always apologize for making them uncomfortable with my boundaries. They didn't realize they'd broken the last piece of leverage they had the second they tried to hijack our guest list. The morning of the wedding, I woke up at 6 a.m. Haley was still asleep, curled under a blanket in the guest room of the vineyard suite. I slipped outside onto the little patio that overlooked the rows of grapevines. The sky was soft pink, the grass still damp with dew. I felt calm, lighter than I'd felt in years. The ceremony was perfect, intimate, warm. Every chair filled with people who wanted to be there, people who supported us, cheered for us, laughed, and cried with us. Haley looked radiant, not just in the dress, but in the way she carried herself. She'd seen me at my worst, and she was still here. We were still here. The officiant, an old college professor of mine, delivered a short, thoughtful speech about love being a choice, not a performance. I caught myself glancing at the rows of empty chairs that had once been reserved for my parents, my brother, and half a dozen aunts and uncles. At first, those gaps had terrified me. Now, they felt like breathing room. After the ceremony, the celebration kicked off. There was laughter, champagne, dancing. No awkward small talk, no forced smiles. My best man made a joke during his toast about Haley having a lot of patience to marry a guy who once called her bro on a first date. People roared. Then, because poetic timing is apparently real, my phone buzzed during the dessert hour. A new voicemail. From my mother. I didn't play it right away. I waited until the evening, when the music slowed and the stars came out. Haley and I were tucked under the gazebo, catching our breath between songs. I showed her the notification. Play it, she said. Let's hear the final act. I put it on speaker. Her voice cracked the moment it started. Mark, I just wanted to say that today should have been different. I thought you'd come to your senses. I thought you'd miss us. But instead, you shut us out like strangers. I don't know what she did to you, but this isn't the son I raised. There it was, still blaming Haley, still framing herself as the victim. She continued, I don't know if we'll ever speak again, but if you ever do want to rebuild this family, it starts with an apology. Click. I stared at the phone for a long moment. Was that her idea of peace? Haley asked, dryly. No, I said. That was her idea of power. I deleted the message. The next morning, we drove off to our honeymoon cabin in the mountains. No reception, no emails, no headlines. Just us and the quiet, and the kind of peace that only comes from finally letting go of people who never actually loved you, just the version of you they could control. 3 weeks later, we returned home to a mailbox stuffed with envelopes. Most were wedding cards, sweet notes, gift receipts. One was from an aunt who'd quietly declined to pick sides but had watched everything from a distance. Inside was a short letter. Mark, I know you think we all sided with your parents. Some of us didn't. We just stayed quiet because we were scared. But watching you stand your ground, it made me wish I'd done the same. Years ago, you didn't lose a family. You uncovered who they were. Congratulations. On everything. Aunt Janice. I pinned that letter to the corkboard above my desk. It became my reminder that sometimes drawing a boundary doesn't divide a family, it reveals it. And that choosing peace over performance is always worth it, even when it costs you the illusion of togetherness. Tyler sent one last email about a month after the wedding. No subject line, just a paragraph. You could have had us there. You could have fixed it, but you chose her. Hope you're happy. I didn't reply, because I was happy. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation for that. I hadn't lost anything. I'd gained something I never had before: freedom, peace, and the right to live my life without apologizing for it. The wedding had been a celebration, but the real gift? That was the silence that followed. My name's Noah, I'm 21, and up until Thanksgiving dinner last year, I thought I just got the short end of the stick in life. You know the type: student loans piling up like a game of Jenga, part-time job at the campus coffee shop, duct-taped sneakers, microwave noodles 5 days a week. I wasn't bitter, not really. I figured life was just tough and my parents did what they could. I never expected anything handed to me. But that night rewrote everything I thought I knew about my family. And it started with one sentence from my grandpa. Thanksgiving has always been a bit of a circus in our family. My mom's side is loud, dramatic, and allergic to minding their own business. But this year, it was my dad's side hosting, which usually meant things stayed calmer, more polite. Grandpa always carved the turkey like it was a ritual, and Grandma passed around her famous cornbread while pretending not to notice my cousin's sneaking extra helpings. It was normal. I was home from college for the weekend, already dreading the midterms waiting for me when I got back. I remember sitting next to my little cousin Mason, who was too distracted by his mashed potatoes to talk much. My parents were across the table, chatting with my uncle and aunt like everything was fine, like they hadn't ignored most of my texts that semester. We were halfway through dinner when Grandpa raised his glass in a toast, something he only did when he was in a particularly sentimental mood. To family, he said, voice shaky but warm, and to seeing our kids grow into something we can be proud of. People murmured their agreements, clinked glasses. Then he looked right at me and said it. And Noah, glad to see you're putting the college fund to good use. Everything around me paused. Forks froze midair. My heart thudded once, then again, faster. I blinked. What fund? That's when I saw it. My dad choked on his drink, spluttering into his napkin. My mom's face drained of color so fast it was like someone pulled the plug. My aunt's eyes darted toward them, and even Mason stopped chewing. Grandpa frowned. The college fund we set up when you were born. You didn't know? And then, like a nail driven into the silence, Mason, sweet, oblivious little Mason, looked up at me and whispered, "Wait, you didn't know?" I didn't say anything. I couldn't. It felt like someone had punched me in the gut. I turned slowly to my parents, but neither of them met my eyes. My mom picked at her peas like they were suddenly fascinating. My dad reached for his wine glass again. "Noah," Grandpa said, clearly confused. "Hasn't the fund been helping with your tuition? We've been putting money in it for years. Every birthday, every Christmas, even when things got tight." I swallowed hard. "No one ever told me about a fund," I said, quieter than I expected. At that, Grandma's lips parted like she wanted to speak, but didn't know where to start. Aunt Julie leaned in slightly, eyebrows raised, her fork resting on her plate. "Wait, so, who's been managing it?" That was when things started to unravel. My dad cleared his throat. We didn't think he needed to know," he said, eyes still on his plate. "You didn't think I needed to know I had a college fund?" My voice cracked on the word had. "We used it," my mom said quickly, her voice tight. "For the house. And bills. And emergencies. We thought it was best." Grandpa's face turned from confusion to something else. Something cold. "What do you mean you used it?" My dad shot him a look, then turned to me. "Noah, we were struggling. The recession hit hard. The roof was leaking, and your brother needed braces." "My brother?" I snapped, cutting him off. "The one who didn't even go to college." "It was all for the family," my mom said, her voice rising. "You wouldn't understand. You were just a kid. You wouldn't remember how bad it got." I stood up. My chair screeched against the floor. Every eye at the table was on me. "You could have told me. You let me take out loans. You let me work 20 hours a week on top of classes. I thought we just didn't have the money. I thought I was doing the right thing, working hard, not asking for help. And the whole time, you were sitting on my college fund." "It wasn't like that," my dad said, but he didn't sound convinced. "You're making this a scene." I laughed, bitter, sharp. "Oh, I'm making a scene? You lied to me for years, and I'm the problem." Grandpa turned to them, his voice quiet but firm. "That money was never meant for you two. It was Noah's. We made that clear." "Well, maybe if you hadn't insisted on putting it in our names," my mom began, but she stopped when she saw the look on Grandpa's face. "Because we trusted you," he said. "Because we thought you'd do right by your son." The table was dead silent. My cousins looked anywhere but at me. Even Mason kept his head down now. My aunt looked uncomfortable, and my uncle? He slowly leaned back in his chair, lips pressed tight. I sat back down, not because I wanted to stay, but because my legs were shaking. "How much was in it?" I asked, looking at Grandpa. He hesitated. "About 40,000 by the time you turned 18. Probably more." We kept adding to it. 40,000. 40,000. That could have wiped out every loan I had. Covered books, housing, maybe even let me breathe for once. I stared at my parents. My mom looked like she might cry, but I didn't care. My dad looked angry, but not ashamed. Just cornered. "We did what we had to do," he muttered. "No," I said, my voice low. "You did what was convenient for you." Grandma finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to talk about this. All of us." But I wasn't listening anymore. I was already pulling out my phone, my fingers moving almost on instinct. Not to make a scene, not to post some angry rant, just to pull up something I'd been sitting on for a while. Something I'd kept buried, figuring it wasn't worth sharing. Until now. And as I opened the document I'd been holding onto for months, the one with every cent I'd scraped together, every scholarship I'd fought for, and a little bonus I'd gotten from the startup I'd interned at over the summer, I saw my dad glance at the screen and freeze. He knew what it was, or at least what it meant, but I wasn't ready to say it out loud. Not yet, because the truth, that was just the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. After the dinner ended in a messy, silent exodus, with Grandma quietly ushering everyone toward dessert like sugar might patch the cracks in our family, I packed my things and drove back to my college apartment early. I left a note for Grandpa thanking him for dinner and for telling me the truth, even if he didn't mean to. The silence in my car on the drive back was louder than anything said at the table. I kept thinking about Mason's face when he whispered, "You didn't know?" The innocence of it. The sheer weight that sentence carried without even trying. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about trust. About my entire childhood being edited, revised, and narrated by two people who saw me as a resource, not a son. That document I'd pulled up? It was a breakdown of everything I'd earned and saved since I turned 18. Scholarships, stipends, job wages, freelance gigs, anything I could hustle. I had been so proud of it, too. I remember sitting in my tiny apartment at 2 a.m. once, calculating whether I could afford a new pair of shoes or if that money was better spent on groceries. I chose ramen and used duct tape on the soles. My parents, apparently, chose braces for my brother. And that bonus from the startup? What they didn't know was that I wasn't just an intern anymore. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, the company offered me a full-time position after graduation. High salary, signing bonus, stock options. They told me they were grooming me for leadership within 2 years if I kept up my pace. I'd been waiting to tell my parents when I got home, waiting for a moment when I thought they'd be proud. Now I wasn't sure I wanted them to know at all. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. I didn't hear from my parents. Not a call, not a text. Grandma messaged me once, just a simple, "Thinking of you. Love you." I stared at it for a while before typing, "Thanks. I'm okay," and then deleting it. I didn't respond. I didn't know how. But then the messages started coming. First from my mom. "Mom, Noah, we should talk. Can we please meet before you go back?" Then my dad. "Dad, you're being immature. This is more complicated than you think. Call me." Then, oddly, from my uncle. "Uncle Dan, hey. Just want you to know I had no idea about the fun stuff. That's messed up. I'm here if you want to talk." I didn't reply to any of them. Not yet. Instead, I did something that made my hands shake. I contacted the bank listed on the trust fund documentation Grandpa had mentioned. It took a bit of digging, a few forwarded emails from Grandma once she realized how serious I was, and a polite but firm phone call with a confused advisor who couldn't understand how the beneficiary of a fund didn't know it existed. When they confirmed that the fund had been drained over the course of 7 years, and that every withdrawal had been authorized by my parents, I felt sick. There it was. Paper trail. Hard numbers. Names. They didn't even try to hide it. I asked if there was anything I could do. The advisor paused before saying, "You'll want to speak to a lawyer. This might fall under misappropriation, especially if the fund was designated specifically for your education." So I did. I made an appointment with a campus legal aid rep, brought them everything. The fund documentation, the bank statements, my own financial history, even printed out emails from Grandpa over the years mentioning adding something extra for your future that I'd always brushed off as vague birthday stuff. The rep looked at me for a long time and said, "Noah, they might have committed a felony." I didn't want to believe it. Still didn't. These were my parents. They tucked me in. They taught me to ride a bike. They bought me a Lego set after my tonsil surgery. And now they were people I might have to take to court. That weekend, I went radio silent. Didn't answer calls. Didn't post online. I needed space. Needed time to think. But the silence only made them louder. On Sunday night, there was a knock at my apartment door. I opened it to find my dad standing there. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept either. Can I come in? I didn't move. I just want to talk. Still, I said nothing. Then he sighed. Fine. I'll talk. You listen. He stood awkwardly in the hallway, hands in his coat pockets. We didn't mean for it to go this far. We just thought we'd pay it back. You were young. You wouldn't notice. Then we fell behind. And things got away from us. I stared at him. You could have told me. I know, he said. But your mother thought you'd resent us. She wanted to wait until we could replenish it. You had 18 years, I said. He flinched. Then he said something that shifted everything. We didn't just use it on ourselves, Noah. We used it on your brother too. His school. His surgery. He's struggling, you know. He's always needed more help than you. You've always managed. We thought you could handle it. I felt the anger rise again. So because I was the low-maintenance kid, I got less? He didn't answer, just looked down at his shoes. Then I asked, what would you have done if Grandpa hadn't said anything? Kept lying? Let me drown in debt. He looked up, and for a moment, I swear I saw regret. Real, painful regret. I don't know. There it was. The most honest thing he'd said to me in years. I nodded slowly, then stepped back and closed the door. No yelling. No drama. Just quiet. But something in me snapped into place after that. I wasn't just going to move on. I couldn't. They made a choice. Now it was my turn. I didn't sleep that night either. After I closed the door in his face, I leaned against it for a long time, listening to his footsteps retreat down the hallway. I expected to feel some kind of satisfaction, some weight lifted off my chest. But I didn't. My stomach churned. Not with doubt. No, I was sure of what they did. But with grief. The kind that crawls in when you finally see your parents not as guardians, but as deeply flawed people who chose themselves over you. The next morning, I got a text from my mom. Just 4 words. We're so sorry. I didn't reply. I went to class. Pretended to take notes. Pretended to listen. But my mind kept playing the same loop. My dad's voice saying, you've always managed. Like my independence was a punishment. Like doing okay meant I didn't deserve help. That night, I sat down with my laptop and started drafting something. Not an email. Not a letter. A formal legal request. The campus legal advisor had already walked me through the steps. If the trust fund was set up in my name and intended specifically for my education, my parents could be liable for misappropriation, especially if they used the money for non-educational purposes. The lawyer had used the word restitution a few times. I hadn't asked what the consequences might be yet. I wasn't ready to hear it, but I was ready to start the process. So I did. I filed the request through the proper channel and CC'd the bank's trust department and my advisor. I didn't even tell Grandpa yet. I wasn't sure how he'd take it. He still believed in family. I wasn't sure I did anymore. 2 days later, I got a call. Blocked number. I usually don't answer those, but something told me I should. It was my mom. Noah, she said, breathless like she'd been crying. Please, don't do this. We'll pay it back. We'll figure it out. You don't have to ruin everything. Her voice cracked on the word ruin. I didn't say anything at first. Then I asked, how much did you take? She hesitated. We didn't keep track. It was over the years. The bank did, I said flatly. Silence. Then, we didn't think it would matter this much. You got scholarships. You're doing fine. That word again. Fine. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I stayed calm. I've been eating canned soup for 3 years, Mom. I've walked 2 miles in the rain because I couldn't afford a bus pass. You left me to figure it out while pretending nothing existed. And you want me to be grateful I managed? We were trying to help the family, she whispered. No, you were trying to survive. And you chose who mattered more. Click. I hung up. I didn't even realize my hands were shaking until I saw the cursor blinking on my screen again. Over the next week, word spread. I don't know how, but someone told Grandpa. Maybe it was my aunt. Maybe Mason overheard something. I don't know. But that Sunday, I got a call from him. Noah, he said, voice low and steady. Can we meet for coffee? Just you and me. I agreed. We met at this quiet diner near my school. He was already sitting at a booth when I arrived, stirring a cup of black coffee like it held all the answers. He looked up at me and didn't smile. I'm sorry, he said. You didn't do anything, I replied. No, he said, but I trusted people who did. And I should have checked. I should have made sure. I sat down slowly. I looked into the trust, he continued. It's gone. Every cent. And I've already spoken to the bank. They're cooperating. If you want to pursue charges, well, you have every right. I didn't say anything. I also found out something else, he added. When your dad asked me to set the fund in his and your mother's name, he said it was for convenience, that it would be safer that way, easier to manage. I believed him. He looked at me, eyes full of something I hadn't seen in years, shame. I should have known better. We sat in silence for a moment. Then I said, they kept it a secret for over a decade. And the only reason I found out was because you said something without knowing. He nodded. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. Placed it on the table between us. I can't undo what they did. But this is yours. I stared at the envelope. Didn't touch it. He sighed. It's not enough to cover everything. But it's a start. And I want you to know, I'm changing my will. Everything I leave behind will go into a separate trust. Only for you and your future. No one else touches it. Not again. I looked at him, really looked at him. I believed him. I think that's what hurt most. That he believed in me, and they didn't. When I finally opened the envelope that night, it was a cashier's check for $10,000. I should have felt relief. But all I felt was anger. $10,000 meant something. It meant someone believed I was worth it. My own parents never did. The next day, I filed a formal complaint with the Family Trust's legal department. And then I started planning something I never thought I'd have the nerve to do. Because winter break was coming. And we always hosted Christmas at our house. Christmas came fast. Too fast. It was the first time I truly dreaded going home. Not in that joking, ugh, can't wait for Aunt Denise's casserole kind of way, but in the deep, bone-heavy sense of walking into enemy territory. I didn't even pack much. Just a single overnight bag. No gifts. No cards. Nothing wrapped in cheerful paper or tied with a bow. I wasn't in the mood for pretending. I had already told Grandpa I'd be coming. He didn't try to talk me out of it. Just said, "You sure you're ready?" I was. Not because I had forgiven anything, but because some things needed to be said face to face. The air was sharp and cold when I pulled into the driveway. Snow still clung to the edges of the lawn, and the house looked exactly the same. Warm, glowing, festive. If you didn't know better, you'd think it was the perfect family home. But I did know better. The moment I stepped through the door, I was greeted by the smell of cinnamon and roasted meat. Christmas music played softly in the background. My mom was in the kitchen, laughing too loudly with my aunt. My dad sat on the couch with a glass of something dark, chatting with my uncle like nothing had happened. They both froze when they saw me. My mom's face stiffened. My dad didn't even stand. I didn't bother with small talk. Just nodded, took off my coat, and walked straight to the dining room where the rest of the family was gathered. Grandpa was already there. He gave me a small nod. Beside him was Grandma, who hadn't looked me in the eye since Thanksgiving. My brother sat at the far end of the table, still glued to his phone. He didn't acknowledge me at all. Dinner was served. It was tense. Everyone acted like they were walking on ice, trying not to be the first one to slip. Conversation stayed surface level. Weather, traffic, work. No one mentioned the trust. No one mentioned the legal complaint I had filed. They probably thought I wouldn't go through with it. That I'd cool off. That I'd be the good kid again. But I wasn't here to be good. I was here for closure. The moment came after dessert. My dad stood up to give his usual Christmas toast. He raised his glass, gave the standard spiel about family, love, and resilience. Then he said it. We're just so proud of how far our kids have come. Even in tough times, we've always stuck together. And that was the final spark. I stood up before he could sit back down. You've always stuck together, I repeated. Right? Except when it came to being honest. Except when it came to me. Silence fell. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. Neatly printed, bound, with labeled sections. I set it on the table. That's the full breakdown, I said calmly, of the trust fund you drained. Every withdrawal. Every date. Every cent cross-referenced with my student loan statements. Just in case anyone here still thinks I'm overreacting. My mom's face crumpled. My dad's jaw clenched. I looked at Grandpa. You asked me if I was sure I was ready. I am. Then I turned to the rest of the table. I worked 3 jobs through college. I skipped meals. I missed out on experiences because I thought we didn't have money. I blamed myself. I thought I was just unlucky. Meanwhile, my parents were quietly spending the fund my grandparents created for my future on themselves. My brother looked up at that. It wasn't all on them, he said. Some of it was for me. Yeah, I said, locking eyes with him. Braces, private tutoring, new laptop every year. While I was repairing mine with duct tape. Grandma spoke up, her voice cracking. We didn't know, Noah. We're so sorry. I nodded once. I believe you. But this isn't just about money. It's about respect, about trust, and about choices. I turned to my parents. You could have told me the truth. At any point, even after the fund was gone. But you didn't. You let me believe we were all struggling together, when really, you just let me struggle alone. My mom whispered. We thought we were doing what was best. For who? I asked. For me? Or for the version of me that didn't ask questions? They didn't answer. I took a breath. I filed a formal complaint with the bank. Legal proceedings are in motion. I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing this because actions have consequences. And because I'm done carrying this burden alone. My dad stood up slowly. You're suing us? Your own parents? No, I said. I'm holding you accountable. He scoffed. You'd really tear this family apart over some money? And that was it. No, I said. You did that the moment you decided I didn't matter as much. I picked up the folder and walked to the living room. Everyone stayed frozen at the table. I took out one final envelope, my Christmas gift, set it on the mantel. Then I turned to the room. I won't be staying tonight. I don't know when, if I'll come back. But that envelope has copies of the legal documentation in case anyone wants to see for themselves. And a letter explaining everything, just so no one can say they didn't know. My mom was crying now. My dad just stared at the wall. Grandpa stood up and walked over to me. You don't have to do this alone, he said quietly. You have more family than you think. I nodded. I know. Thank you. He hugged me, the only one who did. Then I walked out of the house, into the snow-covered night. No one followed me. A week later, I got a letter from the bank confirming the investigation had begun. If fraud or misappropriation could be proven, and all signs pointed that way, my parents might be required to repay the full amount or face civil penalties. I didn't celebrate. It didn't feel like a win, just a necessary reckoning. But what I did do, finally, was pay off part of my student loan. With the check Grandpa had given me, I transferred the rest to a new account, under my name only. I graduated the following spring with honors. Got my first paycheck from the startup 2 months later. Moved into a new apartment. Bought myself a decent pair of shoes, no duct tape. As for my parents, I don't know. We haven't spoken since Christmas. But sometimes, I catch myself thinking about that night. The moment my grandpa said, glad you're enjoying the college fund. The way everything cracked open from there. And I realize, it wasn't the loss of money that hurt the most. It was the loss of belief. The realization that the people who were supposed to protect me didn't. But I'm still standing. And I finally know what I'm worth. Not because of a trust fund, but because I stopped trusting the wrong people and started trusting myself. My name's Chris. I'm 33 years old, work in IT, and if there's one thing you should know about me, it's that I used to be the guy who always showed up. Birthdays, holidays, moving days, Sunday dinners, I was there. Quiet, dependable, and never expecting much in return. If someone needed a last-minute airport pickup or a dog sitter for the weekend, I got the call. And I said yes. I didn't mind, really. I grew up in a big, boisterous family where everyone talked over each other and somehow always made space at the table, even when we were packed elbow to elbow. But somewhere along the way, that warmth changed. Or maybe it was never there for me, and I was too wrapped up in nostalgia to notice. The shift wasn't sudden, it was death by 1,000 cuts. At first, I brushed off the little things. Like when I offered to host a game night and no one showed. Or when my sister, Amanda, forgot to tell me that Thanksgiving dinner had been moved to our cousin Megan's place. I chalked it up to miscommunication. Life gets busy. But after a while, the pattern was impossible to ignore. I'd walk into family gatherings and feel like a guest who'd wandered into the wrong house. Conversations would quiet just a bit when I approached. Smiles would flicker a little too late. And there was always that one person who'd go, "Oh, I didn't realize you were coming." That kind of thing sits in your chest like a stone. But I still showed up. That brings me to my Uncle Jerry's retirement party. He worked 42 years at the same manufacturing plant. Old school, blue-collar guy, proud of his calloused hands and beat-up lunchbox. I liked Jerry. He was one of the few in the family who never made me feel like an afterthought. So when my Aunt Mary sent out an invite for his party at the local VFW, I made sure to clear my calendar. I even chipped in a few $100 toward the event hall and decorations without being asked. Mary just texted me a few weeks before with, "Hey, we're a little short on the deposit. Mind helping out?" And I said sure. No thanks, no confirmation. Just assumed I'd pitch in. And I did. The night of the party, I showed up early to help set up chairs and string up the "Congrats, Jerry" banner. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt good. Jerry gave me a real hug when he arrived, none of that one-arm shoulder pat nonsense. For a few hours, it felt like old times. There were drinks, laughter, awkward dancing, and endless stories about work pranks and forklift mishaps. I was actually smiling, feeling like I belonged again. That was, until I made the mistake of being cheerful. I was standing near the snack table, talking with Megan and Amanda, when I casually said, "I'll bring dessert to the family barbecue tomorrow. What time should I get there?" Megan blinked, confused, then tilted her head. "Oh, you weren't invited?" At first, I thought she was joking, but her face didn't change. Amanda looked away, suddenly fascinated by the chip bowl. I laughed, still holding on to the hope that this was just some weird joke. "Seriously, what time should I come by?" Megan gave a little shrug. I think it's more of a close family thing." "Yeah," Amanda added, finally glancing at me, like, Mom and Dad just wanted to keep it small. "You know, just the core people." That one hit different. Core people. Like I was some extended branch, barely hanging onto the family tree. Then Aunt Mary walked by, sipping from a red plastic cup, and Megan said, "Show him the photo." Mary grinned and pulled out her phone. I didn't even ask to see it. She just held it up, scrolling through images of tables set up in someone's backyard, kids running through sprinklers, a huge custom cake that said Family Barbecue 2023, and a group shot of everyone I'd grown up with. My parents, Amanda's kids, uncles, aunts, even my old babysitter's grandkids somehow made the cut. I wasn't in a single frame. I just nodded, smiled politely, and backed away from the conversation like I just remembered a phone call I had to make. Inside, my chest felt tight, but not in a sad way. Not anymore. It was something sharper. Cold. Focused. I made a quick stop at the bar for another drink and took a seat near the back, thinking, running through everything. Every ride I'd given, every check I'd written, every time I'd made excuses for them. For years, I'd been the family's quiet safety net. The extra wallet. The extra hand. The guy who would never rock the boat. And the kicker? That barbecue tomorrow? I knew exactly where it was being held. The rental for that park venue had gone through my account. I'd booked it 3 months ago when Mary said, "We just need someone with a clean payment history so it doesn't get flagged." I'd paid the deposit. The email confirmation was in my inbox. They never even bothered to switch it out. That was the moment something in me clicked. I didn't get angry, not outwardly. I didn't storm out or flip a table or demand answers. That would have been satisfying, sure, but too easy for them to paint me as the dramatic one. Instead, I finished my drink, helped pack up the decorations, and told Jerry it was great to see him. He said, "Thanks for everything, Chris." "Really? You're one of the good ones." I smiled. "I appreciate that, Uncle Jerry. I really do." Then I got in my car, drove home, opened my email, and clicked Cancel Reservation. It took less than a minute. One click, and their little close family barbecue had no tables, no access, no permit. Just an empty patch of grass with no backup plan. I didn't tell anyone. I just went to bed, slept like a rock. The next morning, my phone started buzzing. One call, then another, then texts. But I didn't check them. Not yet, because I already knew the storm was coming. And for once, I wasn't the one left out in the rain. By noon the next day, the calls had turned into voicemails. My Aunt Mary's voice was the first, shrill and confused. "Chris, the park says our reservation doesn't exist. Did you cancel it by mistake? Call me back, please." Then my mom, "Why would you cancel the venue, Christopher? Everyone's already here. They're making us leave." Then Amanda, short and irritated, real mature. "Did you really have to make this about you?" That one made me laugh. About me? They threw a whole event, invited everyone but me, and now I was the one making it about me? I stayed in bed until nearly 2 p.m. Not because I was being lazy, but because I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of thinking I was pacing around, anxious, wondering what was happening. I already knew what the park people would say. "No reservation? Sorry, ma'am. Someone canceled it yesterday evening." "Yes, we refunded the deposit." "No, you can't set up here without a permit." "Yes, we have another party arriving at 3 p.m. "No, I'm not going to argue with you in front of children." When I finally got up, I made myself a sandwich, opened my laptop, and played some lo-fi music. It was oddly peaceful. I knew they'd try to salvage the event somewhere, somehow, but not with park tables. Not with a covered pavilion. Not with the big speakers they were planning to plug in. And definitely not with a bounce house. Around 4 p.m., I finally checked my phone. 43 messages. Most were from Amanda and my mom. Some from my cousin Megan. A few from numbers I didn't recognize. Probably the plus ones and tag-alongs who now had nowhere to sit and were trying to figure out what was happening. A few messages were just photos. One was of a bunch of folding chairs set up on someone's driveway. Another was a haphazard grill with 3 people crowding around it while smoke billowed into someone's face. It looked miserable. Then I saw the one message I didn't expect. Uncle Jerry. It just said, "Call me when you can." I hesitated. Jerry had always been kind. He didn't deserve to be in the crossfire, but he also hadn't said a word when his wife, Mary, and daughter, Amanda, started icing me out. He'd been quietly complicit. I didn't know what to expect from that call. I dialed anyway. He answered on the first ring. "Chris," he said, like a man exhaling after a long day. "I figured you'd call. I saw your message," I said simply. There was a pause. "Was it you? The cancellation?" "Yes." I didn't dress it up or deny it. I wasn't ashamed. Another pause. Then a sigh. "Well, can't say they didn't deserve it. Still, it caused a big mess today." "I'm sure it did," I said, not coldly, just honestly. "I didn't mean to ruin your weekend. I like you, Jerry. You're one of the few people in that family who's ever treated me like I mattered." He was quiet again. Then he said, "You do matter. I just didn't realize how badly they'd been treating you." I didn't respond right away. I didn't know how to explain that it hadn't just been one event or one day. It had been years. Years of being the extra, the afterthought, the reliable one who never got invited but always got asked for help. "I'm not mad," I finally said. "I'm just done." He let that sit. Then he said, "I wish you weren't. But I get it." And that was the end of that call. Later that evening, Amanda posted something on her Instagram story. A blurry photo of the backup party, complete with disposable plates, mismatched lawn chairs, and a caption that read, "Even when some people try to ruin the fun, real family sticks together." Real family. The irony was suffocating. I didn't engage. I didn't reply. But a few days later, the refund from the venue hit my account, $7.50. I donated it to a local community center in Jerry's name. They were hosting a fundraiser to upgrade their kitchen. I added a note with the donation. "To someone who deserves a real celebration." About a week passed with radio silence. But then I got a message from Megan. It was longer than I expected and surprisingly honest. She wrote, "Hey Chris, I know you're probably still mad, and I don't blame you. I didn't know you weren't invited until you said something at the party. I just assumed you were coming. When you walked away, I realized how messed up it was. The family's been treating you like a backup plan for years. I think some of them know it, too, but no one's ever said anything because you never pushed back. I guess this was your push. Just wanted to say, I saw it. And I'm sorry. That message meant more to me than I thought it would. Not because it fixed anything, but because it confirmed I wasn't crazy." Still, I didn't reply. Not yet. I was still figuring out what done looked like for me. In the days that followed, more messages trickled in. My mom sent a long email about how families go through rough patches and that I shouldn't punish them by cutting contact. Amanda, on the other hand, went full defensive, posting cryptic quotes like, "You find out who people really are when they don't get what they want." I chuckled at that one. If only she knew. Meanwhile, I started doing something new. For the first time in a long while, I began investing in the relationships that made me feel whole. I had friends outside the family, ones who didn't forget me or use me. I invited them over, hosted small dinners, took a trip with a co-worker group to the coast. I smiled more, slept better, but the family wasn't done yet. One night, about 2 weeks after the barbecue incident, I was getting home from work when I saw a car I recognized parked outside my apartment. My mom. And she wasn't alone. Amanda was with her, both sitting in the front seat, like they'd been rehearsing what to say. They hadn't called, hadn't texted. They just showed up. I stood at the curb, keys in hand, looking at them through the windshield. Amanda stepped out first. "We need to talk," she said flatly. "You can't just ghost your family because of one mistake." I raised an eyebrow. "One mistake?" My mom climbed out next. "We didn't mean to hurt you, sweetheart. But canceling the park and ruining everything wasn't the answer. You made everyone uncomfortable." I crossed my arms. "Uncomfortable? That's rich. I've been uncomfortable at your events for years. But that wasn't a problem until I stopped funding them. Amanda rolled her eyes. This is getting ridiculous. Just admit you overreacted and come back to the group. I tilted my head, the corner of my mouth twitching into a dry smile. That's when I said it. You want me back in the group? Then let's start with an apology. Not a fake one. A real one. In front of the whole family. Amanda scoffed. You're joking. No, I said. I'm finally serious. And for the first time in years, they didn't know what to say. My mom looked stricken, like she wasn't sure whether to scold me or cry. Amanda, on the other hand, gave a tight laugh, more air than sound, and said, You've really let this go to your head. You think the family owes you a public apology just because you got your feelings hurt. I didn't answer right away. I just studied her. For years, Amanda had been the queen bee of our family dynamic. Golden child, loudest voice in the room, most photos on the fridge at our parents' house. If there was a group outing, she picked the place. If there was a disagreement, she won it by default. I used to think she earned that place. Now, I realized she simply took it, and the rest of us handed it to her to keep the peace. It's not about hurt feelings, I finally said. It's about respect, or the total lack of it. I was treated like furniture, useful when needed, but invisible the rest of the time. I'm done playing along. If you want me back in your lives, it has to start with you admitting what you've done. My mom tried to soften things. You know how big families are. People forget things. People say things. We all have flaws. I raised a brow. Flaws? You stood there while Amanda laughed at me at the party. You smiled while Aunt Mary showed me photos from an event I paid for but wasn't invited to. You've been silent for years, Mom. That's not a flaw. That's a choice. Her mouth opened, then closed. She didn't have a comeback for that. Amanda folded her arms. So what? You're just cutting us off? You're not coming to Christmas? To birthdays? You're going to make everything awkward for everyone. I looked her straight in the eye. You already did. And with that, I turned and walked toward my front door. I could hear my mom's voice behind me, tentative, weak. Chris, please don't do this. I paused with my hand on the door. Then fix it. Own it. Apologize. I stepped inside and closed the door gently, not slamming it. That made it worse for them, I think. I didn't make a scene. I didn't yell or curse. I was calm. Final. That's what rattled them. That night, no one texted. No follow-up calls. Just silence. For the first time, I think they genuinely didn't know what to do. The next few days were quiet. No new drama. Just space and peace. Then, a week later, I got a message from Uncle Jerry again. It read, Hey, I'm hosting a small dinner. Just a few people. I wanted to invite you. No speeches, no drama. Just dinner. No one else from your mom's side will be there unless you say yes first. I sat with that for a while. I didn't reply right away. I went to the gym, took a walk, ate dinner, and thought. Then I messaged back, only if it's at your place. And only if you promise not to mention the others. He replied, Deal. That dinner turned out to be exactly what I needed. Jerry, his neighbor Dave, an old friend from his work days, and me. We grilled, watched a movie, and talked about everything but family. For the first time, I didn't feel like a placeholder. I felt like a person. I was beginning to realize something important. Family isn't blood. It's not who shares your last name or who remembers your birthday because it's written on a calendar. It's who shows up, who respects you, and who listens even when it's hard. A few weeks later, I posted a photo on Instagram. Just me and Jerry, toasting drinks on his back porch, captioned, Sometimes your real family is the one that asks if you're okay, not just what you're bringing. Within hours, Amanda liked the post, then unliked it, then liked it again. The next day, I got a text from her. No greeting, no explanation. Just, fine. If that's what it takes, then let's talk. You want an apology? Meet me this Sunday. Everyone will be there. It was exactly what I said I wanted. But I learned something else too. Sometimes, people don't apologize because they're sorry. They do it because they're scared of losing their grip on the person they used to control. I sat with my phone in my hand, debating. Did I go? Did I show up to their table just to hear hollow words said through gritted teeth? Or did I let them live in the mess they made? Because for the first time in my life, I didn't need their approval. I wasn't the family doormat anymore. I was the one with the power now. I stared at the text for a long while. Everyone will be there. That line lingered in my mind, like bait laced with the faint smell of guilt and performance. I imagined Amanda standing at the head of some table with arms folded, rehearsing a hollow speech crafted more to salvage her image than to acknowledge any real wrongdoing. My mother clutching her purse tightly, blinking back tears she'd conjure on command. The family nodding along, not out of agreement but out of exhaustion. I could already hear the phrases, "We're sorry you felt that way, let's just move forward, let's not make it bigger than it is." They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted containment. But I wasn't a problem to be managed anymore. Still, a part of me itched for closure. For once, I wanted to say the things I'd never said. Not out of spite, but out of clarity. To take my seat, not at their table, but at my own. So I replied, "I'll come. But if this is just for show, I'm walking out. I won't be polite this time." Amanda replied with a single thumbs up emoji. Sunday arrived, and I showed up to the same family house I'd visited since I was a kid. It looked the same, white shutters, slightly chipped porch rail, flower pots no one really watered. But everything felt smaller now, like someone had turned down the volume on nostalgia. As I walked up the front steps, the door opened before I even knocked. My mother stood there in pearls, and that fake smile she reserved for guests and awkward church potlucks. "Chris," she said, her voice bright. "Come in." I nodded and stepped inside. The air smelled like cinnamon and roast chicken, comforting, familiar. The living room was packed. Uncle Jim, Aunt Mary, Megan, Amanda, and even my younger cousin Zach were all seated, stiff and overly composed. No one said anything at first. They just looked at me like I was the elephant in the room that had finally decided to speak. Amanda stood up. "Thanks for coming," she said, like she was the host of a local news segment. "We wanted to talk. About everything." I didn't sit. I stayed near the entrance, arms crossed. "Go on." She glanced at the others, as if prompting them to say something, but they all stayed quiet. So she continued. "We know you felt left out. We've talked about it. And maybe we didn't realize how much you were doing for the family. It wasn't intentional, but things slipped through the cracks. A non-apology if I'd ever heard one. So this is your big gesture?" I said, acknowledging my existence now that I've stopped funding your parties. Megan winced. My mother cleared her throat. "That's not fair, Chris." "No." I tilted my head. "Because I paid for Jerry's party, paid for the barbecue venue, helped with groceries after Dad's knee surgery, fixed Zach's computer, rewired Aunt Mary's lights. Should I keep going?" Amanda looked irritated. "Okay, we get it. You're the family handyman/ATM. Do you want a medal or something?" There it was. The real Amanda. "No," I said calmly. "I just wanted the same basic respect you give each other. The same seat at the table. But I guess that's only reserved for the core family." Uncle Jim finally spoke. "We didn't mean it that way." "Then what did you mean?" I asked. "When you hosted a barbecue and didn't invite me, even though I booked the venue. When you all posed for photos and smiled like nothing was wrong. When no one even thought to check in after I quietly stopped showing up." They had no answer. Just the sound of the clock ticking and someone shifting awkwardly in their chair. "You all had years to say something. And you didn't. I gave and gave, and you took and took. And when I pulled away, you treated me like the problem. Like I was overreacting. Like I had to earn my place in this family." I looked around the room, but I finally figured something out. I never had a place. I was a utility. A convenience. And now that I've stopped being that, you want me back so you can keep using me. You want a Band-Aid, not a conversation. Amanda scoffed. "Oh my God. You're being so dramatic." "Then this is the last time," I said. "The last time you get to call me that. The last time you reduce my boundaries to drama. I'm done." And I meant it. I turned to leave. "Chris, wait." My mother stood up. "Don't do this." I stopped at the door, but didn't turn around. "You always said we were family," she said. "That we stick together." I looked back at her, my voice quiet but firm. Sticking together isn't the same as sticking around when you're not wanted. I spent years holding this family together with tape and favors. And when I stopped, you didn't ask if I was okay. You just got mad that I wasn't useful anymore. Amanda rolled her eyes. "So what? You're just cutting everyone off?" "No," I said, opening the door. "I'm just finally choosing myself." And I walked out. The air hit different outside. Crisp. Freeing. I didn't feel like the bad guy. I didn't feel guilty. I felt clean. That night, I deleted the family group chat. I blocked Amanda. I muted my mom's messages. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it for peace. Over the next few weeks, the silence continued. Megan messaged me again, this time more direct. "I don't blame you. I'd probably do the same. Just know not everyone in the room agreed with how you were treated. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." I thanked her but didn't say much more. I wasn't ready to open that door again. Instead, I started building something new. A better circle. Friends who checked in without needing anything. Coworkers who invited me because they liked my presence, not my bank account. I even started dating again, something I'd avoided for years because I'd been so drained by my family drama. The old wounds still ached sometimes. Holidays were especially hard. But they hurt less when I reminded myself that walking away wasn't selfish. It was necessary. About 6 months later, I heard through a mutual friend that Amanda had thrown a party for her daughter's birthday. Half the family didn't show. Apparently, the absence of the guy who always made things run smoothly was being felt more than they expected. I smiled when I heard that. Because sometimes, the best revenge is just removing yourself. No screaming. No chaos. Just quiet, firm absence. I never got the apology I deserved. But I got something better. My life back. You ever get the feeling that you're just there? Like, you exist in a space, but nobody really sees you? That's how it had always been with my family. I wasn't the golden child, wasn't the troublemaker. Just the one in between, the one who did what was expected but never quite enough. It started small. Little things. My parents forgetting to save me a plate at dinner. My brother taking my things without asking, knowing no one would care when I complained. They never outright said I wasn't wanted, at least, not at first. But it was always there, in the way they talked around me, in the way my existence seemed to be an afterthought. I tried to brush it off. Families weren't perfect, right? Maybe I was just being sensitive. Maybe if I worked harder, did better, they'd finally see me as someone worth keeping around, so I tried. Hard. I made sure my grades were solid. I helped out around the house. I stayed out of trouble. But it never seemed to matter. My brother, though, he could do whatever he wanted. Talk back, skip chores, fail a class, didn't matter. My parents would make excuses for him. He's just a kid. He's going through a tough time. You should be more supportive of him. Every time I pointed out the difference in how we were treated, I was the problem. I was being difficult. And then, one day, the resentment boiled over. But not from me, from them. It was a Saturday night. I had just gotten home from work, nothing special, just a part-time job at a local grocery store. I worked weekends to save up some money since my parents never really gave me much. My brother, on the other hand, didn't have to lift a finger. Anything he wanted, he got. I walked into the house, exhausted, and the first thing I saw was him sitting on the couch, controller in hand, completely zoned into his game. A half-eaten plate of food sat on the table, and on the floor, my backpack. Open. My notebooks and papers scattered across the rug. Dude, what the hell? I sighed, bending down to pick up my stuff. Oh yeah, he muttered, not even looking away from the screen. Needed paper. Took some. I flipped through my notebook, stomach sinking. My notes, the ones I had spent hours on, were gone. Torn out, I clenched my jaw. Are you serious? Finally, he looked at me. Relax. It's just some dumb notes. Not like you do anything important anyway. That hit harder than it should have. Maybe because deep down, I knew that's how he really saw me. How they all saw me. Where are they? I asked, my voice tight, but he scoffed. Dunno. Probably in the trash. I don't know what it was about that moment, but something inside me snapped. Not in an angry, screaming way. Just a cold, quiet realization I wasn't one of them. Not really. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. You're unbelievable, I muttered, walking past him toward the kitchen. That's when my parents walked in, and that's when everything went downhill. My mom and dad walked in, laughing about something, some inside joke between them, something I was never part of. But the moment they saw me standing there, the mood shifted. What's with the attitude? My dad asked, eyes narrowing. I exhaled sharply, still gripping my ruined notebook. Ask him, I said, nodding toward my brother. He tore out my notes, just threw them away like they were nothing. My mom barely glanced at him. It's just paper, she said, waving a dismissive hand. I looked between them, waiting for something. Even just a that wasn't cool, or don't do that again. But nothing. Instead, my brother smirked. Yeah, it's just paper, he echoed. Like he knew he'd already won. I felt my fingers tighten around the notebook. Right. Of course. I turned to go upstairs, but my dad's voice stopped me. You know, this attitude is exactly why no one wants to be around you. I froze. What? I asked, turning slowly to my mom's side like she was tired of me already. You overreact to everything. Always playing the victim, always causing problems. Causing problems? I let out a bitter laugh. For what? Expecting basic respect? For not wanting my stuff trashed? My brother snorted. God, you're so dramatic. I shook my head. You guys act like I'm the issue, but you don't even see what's happening. You just let him do whatever he wants. Dad folded his arms. Because he's not the one constantly whining. That hit hard. But not as hard as what came next. My brother leaned back on the couch, arms stretched behind his head, and smirked. No one wants you here, man. I felt my stomach drop, but it was my parents' reaction that broke something in me. They nodded. They actually nodded. My mom didn't say a word. My dad didn't argue. They just stood there, silent, as if that was a fact they had accepted a long time ago. I didn't yell. I didn't beg for them to take it back. That I just breathed. And something inside me went cold. Okay, I said simply, and I walked upstairs to pack my bags. And I left. But this wasn't the end. Not even close. Because the next morning, my phone was blowing up with 12 missed calls. And that's when I knew leaving was the best decision I had ever made. I didn't answer the calls. Not at first. I just stared at my phone, watching as the notifications kept piling up. My brother, my dad, even my mom. For a family that didn't want me, they sure were desperate to reach me now. I let it ring. I wasn't in a rush. After leaving last night, I didn't even have a plan. I had thrown my things into a duffel bag and walked out, feeling numb. I crashed at a friend's place, someone who actually gave a damn about me. He didn't ask questions, didn't push, just handed me a blanket, said, "You can stay as long as you need." It was more kindness than my own family had shown me in years. But now they wanted something. And I had a feeling it wasn't because they missed me. By the time the calls finally stopped, a few texts started rolling in. The first ones were just as I expected. Mom texted, "You're being immature. Come back." Dad texted, "Enough of this nonsense. You need to stop acting like a child." I scoffed. Yeah, I really left. And they clearly weren't sorry. Then, a new message came in. One that changed everything. Mom texted, "Come home now. We have a problem." I stared at the screen, my pulse picking up. "A problem?" I debated ignoring it. But curiosity got the best of me. So I finally texted back. Just 2 words. "What happened?" Her reply came almost instantly. "Your brother screwed up. Bad." And just like that, I knew. They didn't miss me. They didn't want me back. They needed me. And that gave me an idea. I leaned back against the couch, staring at my phone. So now they needed me? Interesting. I wasn't in a hurry to respond. Instead, I let them sweat a little. If my brother had really screwed up, then whatever happened was big enough that my parents, who had never once taken my side, were now reaching out. After about 10 minutes of silence, more messages started rolling in. Dad texted, "We don't have time for your attitude. Just come home." Mom texted, "Please. This is serious." Serious? That almost made me laugh. When my problems were serious, they told me to get over it. But now that my brother was in trouble, suddenly it was urgent. I took my time typing my next response. "Not my problem." A minute passed. Then another. Then my dad called. I let it ring. Declined. A second later, a text popped up. "Dad, you're being selfish." I exhaled sharply through my nose. Selfish? That was rich, coming from him. Then my mom texted again. "Mom, your brother's been arrested." I blinked. Okay. Now I was interested. I grabbed my friend's car keys off the counter. "I need a ride." He raised an eyebrow. "You sure? Thought you were done with them." I smirked. "Oh, I am. But I need to see this for myself." 15 minutes later, I pulled up in front of my house. My dad was pacing on the porch, phone in hand, looking more stressed than I'd ever seen him. My mom sat on the steps, head in her hands. For once, there was no laughter, no dismissive remarks, just pure, panicked silence. I took my time walking up. "So," I said casually, "who wants to tell me what happened?" My dad turned, eyes sharp. "Where the hell have you been?" I raised an eyebrow. "Not here. Like you wanted." He clenched his jaw, but before he could say anything, my mom spoke. "It's your brother," she said, voice shaking. He stole something. From the wrong people." I frowned. The wrong people? Dad ran a hand over his face. "Some guys at that arcade he hangs out at. We don't know the details, but they called the cops. He's in holding right now." I almost laughed. Of course. My brother had spent years treating me like garbage, thinking he was untouchable. And now, the real world had hit him like a truck that I crossed my arms. "And what do you want me to do about it?" Mom gave me a desperate look. "We need money for a lawyer. Bail. Something. We need your help." I stared at her for a long moment. Then, finally, I smiled. They needed me, but I didn't need them. After all the years of pushing me aside, of treating me like I was nothing, now they were looking at me like I was their only hope. And in a way, I tucked my hands into my pockets, tilting my head slightly. "So let me get this straight. You told me I was unwanted. You let my brother treat me like garbage. You didn't care when I walked out. But now that he's in trouble, you suddenly remember I exist?" My dad's jaw tightened. "This isn't about that. This is about family." I laughed. A short, sharp sound. "Oh, now we're family? That's funny, because last night, I was a burden." Mom's eyes were pleading. "Please, we can talk about all of that later. Right now, we need to get him out before this gets worse." I let out a slow breath, pretending to think it over. "And how much money are we talking about?" Dad sighed. "Bail is set at $10,000. We can pay a portion, but we need you to cover the rest." I whistled. 10 grand, huh? Sounds serious." My mom perked up slightly. "So you'll do it?" I smirked. "Oh, absolutely not." Their faces fell so fast, I almost felt bad. Almost, "Excuse me," my dad snapped. I shrugged. "Not my problem." Mom's voice cracked. "But he's your brother." "No, he's your son," I corrected. "And you made it very clear that I was never part of this family." Dad stepped forward, anger flashing in his eyes. "You think you're proving a point? You think this is funny?" I met his glare without flinching. "No, I think it's fair." Mom reached for my arm. "We'll pay you back." I took a step back. "You think I trust you? The people who threw me away without a second thought?" Her mouth opened and closed, but she had nothing to say. I shook my head. "Here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna figure this out without me, just like you always wanted. And I'm gonna walk away, just like you told me to." I turned on my heel, making my way back to my friend's car. Behind me, my dad shouted, "Don't you dare walk away from us." I glanced over my shoulder. "You already did it first." Then I got in the car and drove away, leaving them in the mess they created. As I drove away, my hands clenched around the steering wheel. I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt like I finally got the last laugh. But instead, I felt hollow. Not because I regretted my decision. No, they had it coming. But because after everything, even after they'd begged for my help, I knew they still didn't see me as family. They just saw me as a solution. A wallet. A safety net. And now, that net was gone. That night, I sat in my apartment, scrolling through my phone while enjoying a nice, greasy burger from my favorite takeout place. It was peaceful, quiet. The kind of night I hadn't had in years living under that roof. I had half a mind to turn my phone on silent, but I couldn't resist checking my notifications. And, surprise, surprise, my family had not given up. Why, Mom had sent 3 messages in a row. "We can work something out. Please, let's talk. Your brother is still in jail. We're struggling to get the money together. Please, I know we were harsh before, but we're family." I nearly choked on my soda. Now we're family? Now they cared? That was rich. I was debating whether to even respond when another text popped up, this time from my dad. "Look, we can repay you. You just need to trust us." That one actually made me laugh out loud. Trust them? The same people who spent years treating me like an unwanted guest in my own home? The same ones who told me to leave without a second thought? Yeah, right. Just as I was about to put my phone down, another message came in. From my brother. "Come on, man. You're really gonna let me rot in here?" Oh, this was too good. After everything he put me through, All the times he pushed me around, made fun of me, called me useless, and now he wanted my help? I decided to have a little fun. You told me no one wanted me around. I'm just respecting your wishes, smiley face. Delivered. Read. No response. That I smiled to myself, stretched my arms behind my head, and took another bite of my burger. Life was good. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of messages. I groggily rubbed my eyes, unlocked my phone, and started scrolling through them. Apparently, things were getting rough for the family back home. We had to sell the TV and Dad's golf clubs. Your mother is furious with me. Hope you're happy. Please, we don't know what to do anymore. And then, the best one yet, my brother. I swear to God, when I get out, you better pray I don't find you. Now that was hilarious. The same guy who needed my help was threatening me? I decided to respond. That's some strong language for someone who needs my help. Try again. An entire hour passed before my mom finally swallowed her pride and sent another message. Please, we're really struggling. I let her sit in that desperation for a few minutes before replying. Tell you what, I'll bail him out. On one condition. She didn't hesitate. Anything? I smirked. I want a public apology. In the family group chat. A long one. I want you all to admit every horrible thing you've said to me, and I want you to thank me for helping. I knew that would break my dad's pride. But if they wanted my help so badly, they'd have to grovel for it. Sure enough, it took them a while, but eventually, a new message popped up in the family group chat. We need to talk about how we've treated you. We've made mistakes, and we realize now how much we've hurt him. We deeply regret our words and actions. He is an important part of our family, and we are grateful for his generosity in helping us during this difficult time. It was stiff, it was forced, and it was completely humiliating for them. Perfect that I gave them a simple thumbs up emoji and went about my day. Did I actually bail my brother out? Haha, absolutely not. But at least I finally got the apology I always deserved. The following week, I got a call from my brother. Man, I can't believe you did this to me, he growled through the phone, his voice thick with frustration. I thought you were better than this. I couldn't help but laugh. It wasn't the kind of laugh that was filled with malice, more like the kind of laugh you get when the universe hands you exactly what you deserve. Better than what? I asked, my tone light, almost playful. I'm just giving you what you wanted. You told me I wasn't wanted, remember? So now you get to stay exactly where you belong. I could hear him slamming something against the jail bars in the background. You can't do this. You're really just leaving me here? I let the silence hang in the air for a moment before responding. You know, I thought I might bail you out. I really did. But you and the rest of the family? You've made it pretty clear that I don't matter. I paused, letting the words sink in. So now, I get to laugh. I get to enjoy my life knowing that I'm out here living it on my terms, while you're stuck. Enjoy your stay. He didn't say anything for a while, and I could almost picture him fuming on the other end, but I didn't care. After years of being treated like an afterthought, like some invisible shadow in the background, this was my moment. When I hung up the phone, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I wasn't angry anymore. In fact, I couldn't even feel that resentment I used to carry around for them. All of it had melted away. And just like that, my brother stayed in jail. They tried everything to get him out, but the charges were serious enough that it was out of their hands. They begged and pleaded, but the truth was, they needed me far more than I ever needed them. As for me, I walked away, head high, knowing that I had finally reclaimed my power. I didn't need to lift a finger to make their lives miserable. They'd already done that for me. All I had to do was sit back, enjoy my peace, and know that they would never, ever see me the same way again. And every time I glanced at my phone, with its constant reminders of how desperate they were, I smiled. Because in the end, it wasn't just about the money. It was about the sweet, satisfying taste of revenge. And for the first time in a long time, I was finally living for me.
Honestly, this story is pretty satisfying. The protagonist was treated terribly by his family, but the way he flipped the script and didn't help his brother out after all that was brilliant. It's like the perfect revenge, and he didn't even have to do anything too drastic. Just let them deal with the consequences. What do you think? Was it the right call, or did he go too far? Would you have helped, or is this payback well deserved? Let me know what you think.